Bobby, you changed your hair.
I look a little different today.
Everyone's going to be super confused. Like, wow, it's super curly today. It's the rain. It's the rain.
All right. I'm going to add you as a host so you can help me
because I don't see any of the controls yet. Excuse me. That good one? That's a good one, yelling. Hey, kiddo.
Good morning. Hi. All right. So it says it's recording. So I'm assuming it's all set up to record.
Good morning.
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 It is a challenge for these larger classes where you have to now have a password.
Yeah.
Waiting room.
Well, and it moves so quickly that you like end up muting. I think I muted Jen by accident yesterday as I was admitting people.
I feel like you're going to mute me today.
Yeah. I'm going to try not to.
Sure. Good talk.
Yeah, right.
Good morning.
Hi, David.
How are
David.
you? Hello, Tim.
Hey. I don't see breakout rooms here.
So let me make you, you know what? I'm going to make you a host. I'm going to change you to the host, and then you'll be able to do the breakout rooms. Because if you do them after I leave for Coaches Skills Camp.
Yeah. There we go.
Do you see them now?
I do.
Okay. Can you make Jen a co-host again, so that way I can still a co-host, so I can admit people.
Yeah. Oh boy.
So if you go next to Jen's name.
Yeah, I got it. Yes.
There you go. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'll keep an eye on the waiting room here. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It feels like it's Friday, but it's only Wednesday. Maybe we need to start the morning with some jumping jacks or something.
Easy. Easy. You got to let Fadden finish his coffee first, I think. There it is. Look at the mic swings in.
More than just the first one, man. I need two of those if we're doing jumping jacks.
I should have brought my microphone too. I left it at the other office.
It's just my quest to be more like Tim. What can I say?
Yep.
I mean, everyone wants to be like Tim.
Dear God.
No, it's actually kind of funny. I had this set up before I actually started doing this job because I was basically constantly on video calls as well in the previous life. And I'm just looking at how dependent we are, on this tech now. And I'm just like, well, hey, at least there's 3 things I don't have to buy.
Yeah, right.
Translated right over.
Yeah. What'd you do before, Eric?
Immediately prior, I ran a copywriting and communication consulting firm. It was about 6 years or so before I spun that down. And then prior to that, actually, was I guess you could say my main career. I did 17 years in senior technology operations as an administrator and sysad and stuff like that. So got bored with those things and then left each one. And so here I am now.
And
so senior technology, you taught old people like me how to use computers, or no, I'm just kidding.
No, senior admin. That's nice though. Again, another cup of coffee and I would have been right there with you.
I have to ask, I'm going to guess, is it Taiwasalki? Did I say it right? Taiwasalki. That's my guess.
No, it's pronounced
no. What is it?
It's pronounced Tawaski.
Tawaski. Done.
Yeah.
My wife's first name is Janina, Gianina. She's Australian, and it's Italian for Janet. It's the bane of her existence. So when people say, how do you pronounce it? I always say carefully. Kowalski. All right, Kowalski. All right.
When I was a teacher, I taught in a district and we had kids that represented 85 plus different countries in the world with different languages. And I would, like the first day of school, I was like, okay, you need to tell me how to say your names.
Right.
And because I really want to make sure that I'm saying it correctly. And I had this one little boy who had, I don't even know what his actual given name was. He would just tell everyone his name was Steve. And I was like, buddy, yeah. I was like, buddy, the name that you have is an important name. Your parents gave it to you.
Yep.
And everyone in this room should learn how to say it. And so he was like, I don't even know how to say it. It was really little. He was like in kindergarten.
Yeah.
I was like, where did Steve come from, buddy? He's like, I don't know. It's just easy to say. I was like, okay, well, we all have to work on this. Like, this is important. Our names are really important. So, yeah, it's definitely something we all need to, I get like, even my last name, people add all kinds of letters to it. And like,
yep.
It's.
Well, you're confusing everybody now because everybody sees Jen Bovey, but it's actually Aaron McLaughlin. So it's, yeah.
I know.
If there's a quiz at 9:30, everybody's going to fail. Yeah.
Names are important, and my name is not correct on here today.
Yes.
So
playing the part of Jennifer Bovey
Sue's
today.
saying she's trying to get into the Zoom and she can't get in.
Oh boy.
All right, that's our instructor, our facilitator for today. So let me send that to her. She's not in the waiting room though, is she?
No. But I know we also changed the link at some point too. So let's just make sure she has the right link. You know, I know we're throwing out kellerignite.com, but for some people, when their cache gets all jacked up, that doesn't work.
Okay, so how do I see the number? Go to the invite at the bottom, right? Participants, invite.
I hope so, yep.
And then.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry, we're having like a fire drill conversation about how to get people in. Just the instructor. It's fine. I mean, if she can wait outside. She can teach from outside. It's fine.
All right. So I'm going to like minimize
we all know in
my
our hearts she
screen
wanted to be here.
so I can send her the email invitation.
Sure.
Okay.
Just make her dial in.
I know.
Yeah. We'll get a stock photo. We'll get an 8x10 glossy and just have her calling on the phone.
Exactly. It'll be fine.
Okay, so it's 98907960652.
Was that a 9?
ID? Right? Okay.
She's in.
Okay.
There she is.
Yay! Success. You're here. Okay. All right. So it's just now 9 o'clock. We still have people rolling in though. We're only at like 34 people. We'll make sure that I'm going to add Sue as a co-host so she can share her screen.
Mm-hmm.
And Tim, are you admitting people?
I hope so.
Okay.
It feels like I'm doing that.
It feels like it?
Yeah. Yeah. I just keep hitting admit all. They're all coming in now.
Yeah, this is kind of a funny thing. Like, it's great because we can keep the room secure, but
can we?
If you're just admitting all, like,
yeah.
Is that really?
Yeah. What is your KWU ID? What's Gary's middle name? What's my favorite color?
All right.
Can you guys see me? Am I on?
We can.
Okay. Whew.
Yeah, it's a little dark, Sue, though. If you have
no,
because of the window behind you, maybe. Do you have a light in front of you? Can shine on your face and.
Or can you put it? Have John put in another window.
I know, right?
He's handy.
Hey there, Jennifer. Or no, that's not Jennifer.
No, that's Aaron McLaughlin playing the part of Jennifer.
Is that any better?
Yeah. Normally, Jen sends out an email to everybody with the link every morning.
Okay.
So some people might be looking for that. I just went back to yesterday's link.
All right. I can post it on the Facebook group. I don't have the email for everyone. But I'll put it on the Facebook group. Maybe that will help. Because I don't think I have the email list. Oh, Jen is on it. She just posted it. Okay, so she probably is going to send out the email too. I'm playing the part of Jen today. So actually, Tim, because I made you the host, you have to make Sue a co-host.
Stand by.
I gave you all the power.
Dear God. Lord help us all. All right, stand by. Kenyon. There's that. There's that.
That way she can share her screen. Oh,
Yep.
so we can see her face now. Yeah. Big smile. You're ready to go.
Well, before we get started, who wants to share a great story of part of their 10-4? You had 10 conversations. You added 10 people to command. You previewed 10 homes. You had 10 chicken nuggets last night. Like, tell me something. Something. I mean, the spicy ones are out. Somebody had that. No? Okay.
Well, you know what, Tim? You bring up a good point. So this came up in coaching at least 3 times in the last week with agents who are newer to the business. So
Sure.
Some people, I think, are feeling a little intimidated about going into open houses at this point, whether it's COVID related or just actually feeling new to the business. And so I had shared a script, which is, hi, I'm blah, 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 not Jen Bovey. I'm Erin McLaughlin with Keller Williams, and I'm just previewing the property. And just introduce yourself to the agent who's holding the open house, walk through, and then say thank you.
Yep.
It's really that simple. So interestingly enough, a couple people had said to me in the last week or so that they didn't know if that was okay to do if they didn't actually have a buyer that they were working with. So, if you want that language, like I'm just previewing the property, that's fine. And no agent is going to be mad at you for coming through their open house.
No.
Right.
No. Just do it.
Just do it. Yeah.
Ask for forgiveness instead of permission. That's my motto.
Yeah. I've never had anyone. I mean, when I first started, that's what I did a lot because I wanted to know my market. So I would just plan around any open houses and I would just say just simply that I'm previewing the property. Thank you.
Yep.
Have a great day.
And get used to looking at properties from an agent perspective and not like how much you like the living room set. Like walk through a property and see if you can figure out what kind of heating system it is. Do they have AC? How old are the systems? Is there any sign of moisture or leakage? Like look at it from that perspective because that when you're out with a buyer is what they're going to be expecting of you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we have to remember we're looking at with our realtor eyes and we're shopping with their wallet, right?
Yep.
And the other thing too, if I can jump in and add something, I think that's really good to do for a newer agent because as well as listening to the conversations that are going on between whether it's the listing agent or buyer's agents there with their buyers, just listening and listening to the lingo and the conversations and how that flows, I think is a good lesson.
Yep. I have had too, when we've done an open house, even during COVID, I have had a newer agent come to the open house prior to it starting. And I've taken them through the house as if they were a buyer to show them how I take a buyer through a house, just to get them in that different perspective of how am I looking at a house when I go into it. So if you do have somebody newer, or if you are a new agent and you know an agent that's hosting an open house, ask them if they'll do that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, it's about 9:07, so I think we'll probably get rolling. Playing the part of Jennifer Bovey today is Dr. Erin McLaughlin, just so you guys know. It's, like, did Bovey's hair get real spiral in the rain, or is it not her? So she's taking a mental health day. taking some time with her family. So she's off today. Erin is here. Erin has a national commitment to get yelled at by some of the greatest in our company at 11 o'clock. So she's going to be going to a major coaching call at 11. I'll be here with you all day. And we are blessed to have Susan Kenyon, member of our ALC at Market Center 463, which I've decided we're now going to call ourselves Greater Portsmouth. There's a Greater Hartford and a Greater Portland, and the other Portsmouth is in Virginia. We're Greater Portsmouth. So here we are, Market Center 463. Our OP is Nathan Dickey. And Erin is a coach with me. We team up to yell at all of our agents together with love, of course, and one of our agents that we adore. Susan Kenyon has stepped up. She will be joining us again as we get closer to closing out Ignite to teach again. A phenomenal teacher, and I'll shut up, which I don't normally do. I'm actually going to mute myself, Susan. Don't worry. I want you to tell your story and explain how you got here, and then we'll get into it, and I will continue to admit people.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for coming. My name is Susan Kenyon. I am out of the Portsmouth Market Center. My husband and I work out of Dover, New Hampshire. We're both licensed in New Hampshire and Maine. So if any of you folks from outside the area have anybody coming up to the area, feel free to reach out to us. We will take very good care of anybody that you want to send up this way. I've been licensed for 6 years, and I love being a realtor and a real estate agent up here. We have a team up here. I currently serve on the ALC in Portsmouth. And if you have any questions during the presentation today, please feel free to unmute yourself, interrupt me. I love participation. I love seeing people's faces, so feel free to put your video on so that we can see everybody. And I'm super excited to talk to you guys today about the buyer presentation. I am also in production, so my perspective today on this presentation is going to be coming from getting a contract signed, building relationships, following up with your people, and making money. And anything that I can do to help you all do that, please let me know. Let me see. I know we're in the period right now of COVID, and there's a lot of guidelines and things that we're doing a little bit differently because of that. But for today, I'm going to be speaking in terms of as if COVID didn't happen. So guess what? We're back into January and February if anybody wanted to take a little break from March through present day. The reason that I'm doing that is because the personal connection that you develop during a buyer presentation is invaluable. And any chance that you do get to have an in-person, whether you're across the table from somebody, you do have technology with Zoom or FaceTime, things like that, Skyping. We have a lot of buyers coming into our areas from out of state. You can still make this an in-person presentation with video and technology. I strongly encourage you guys to do that. I love meeting with buyers. It's kind of like the first date. Everyone's excited. The buyers are excited about the prospect of a new home. And it's your chance, too, to be always learning about your contact prior to the presentation. Who are they? Are they a first-time buyer? Are they a moving-up buyer? Are they retiring and scaling back? Or are they an investor? So when you're on your calls and doing your contacts and you're nurturing, get as much of that information as possible so that as you are giving your presentation and on the fly trying to really personalize it to that person sitting across the table, you have as much information and tools in your toolbox as you can. And the agent's excited. We're excited about the prospect of a new client, a potential new paycheck down the line. So the presentation to the buyer is really awesome. One thing that I always like to keep in mind is that you're always presenting. So we're going to talk about the buyer presentation, but when you're in the grocery store, you're presenting. When you're at a barbecue with your family and friends, you're presenting. So as we're helping you build a buyer presentation, I'm going to be reminding you to practice it and learn it, because it should be something that just can flow off of your tongue without having to say, okay, I have a buyer presentation today. So we're going to practice. And, why are we practicing? Why are we learning about our buyers? So that we're not wasting their time and we're not wasting your time. Because time is money, and we want to be respectful of both our own time and of their time. And also to make sure that when you're going into a formal presentation, that you're talking to somebody that is qualified. And we're going to actually talk about that and how to determine whether or not they're qualified, so that if they're ready to buy, great. If they're not, how can you help them so that they will be ready to buy? They will be a buyer at some point, even if it's not in the next 3 months. And this buyer presentation should help you pull that out so that you're spending your time appropriately. And if they are a buyer right now, then it's time to roll up your sleeves and get to work. So everything that you do during the presentation now will help you to show them fewer houses, get them under contract in the best possible house, and it will help you with building your relationship. And yeah, that's it. I'm ready to roll if you guys are.
Sounds
That's my
good.
intro.
You've got a chance to share your screen if you want to do that for the slide deck.
Okay. And I do.
And I've put all the class materials for today in the chat. If there's something that you need that you haven't found, also, you can join the Facebook group. I'll put the link in the chat today. So if you're new with us today, join that group and you can get all the materials.
Okay.
And
All right. So I am hitting share your entire screen. Here it comes. Wait for it. Anyone see it?
You're sharing me.
Oh, hold on. Where'd it go?
I mean, it's good for a couple of minutes, but yeah, we
Yeah,
definitely want to move to the slide deck at some point.
There you go.
Can you see it now?
Yeah, we're just seeing Aaron and Tim, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, there we go.
Nobody wants that at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning.
Is it on?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
You just got to put it into view and put it into full screen. That's all.
Oh gosh, all this technology.
If you click on view.
How's that?
Go to
slideshow.
Yep.
Up. That you, folks.
And then hit play from start.
Play from start.
Or current slide, whatever you were doing. Yep.
There we go. Is that good?
Now go to use slideshow, because we can see everything right now. We want to just see the. There we go. There you go.
Okay, awesome. So some of this is going to be review. And today, we're going to review growing your business versus running your business. So as we're moving into the running your business with presentations, we first have to remember that we have to grow our business. So we're lead generating for buyers and sellers. We're making seller presentations and making buyer presentations. And today we're going to focus on making buyer presentations. It's always important to remember that you don't get to run your business unless you grow your business. So this part is super important. Best practice is if you do everything on the left every single day, then you will have the opportunity to do the things on the right, which is running your business. Dealing with business never, ever takes the place of finding business. And today we're going to focus on setting the appointment. So what we talk about a lot every day is, building a routine so that you're going into the office every day, whether that office be at your house or in a market center, and making your calls, getting on Facebook, however you are doing your lead generation. Your goal every time you sit down should be to set an appointment. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So what happens is you set the appointment and then you go, oh my God, what am I going to do? Now I actually set the appointment. And that is in the lead generation model, which I love this. I love this slide because it really does break it down into how we're building our business, how we're building our database. And right at the top, we're prospecting based and marketing enhanced, where we're putting people into our database, we're capturing them, we're getting all of their information, like, obviously their names, anybody else that's going to be important in the decision-making process. their contact information, any personal information that you can get, you're putting that into your database. And AKA Command, if that's what you're using, use something. Hopefully you're using Command, but every single time you're sitting down in lead generation, you should have Command up. You should be putting notes in there so that as you're continuing to talk to those folks and nurturing those folks, you have all of the information that you need. At a minimum, your database should be made up of 2 parts, leads and contacts. So your leads, you're having one-way conversations with. So, you guys know who those folks are. You go to an open house or you host an open house and you get a lead. They may, if they're not working with an agent, you come back to the office, you put them into your database. Now you're reaching out to them until they become a contact where you can have two-way conversation. And now it's really interactive. When you're working with a lead, you're wanting to be giving them value so that they want to take that next step with you and say, yeah, I do want to interact with you and have a two-way conversation. How are you giving them value? It really depends on how well you've listened to them. Are you setting them up on a listing cart so that, if you met them at an open house, you know a little bit about what they're looking for because they chose to go to that open house. Start showing them some other similar properties, giving them market information on that area. How many days on market are homes? What are the current prices? Stuff like that. Then you'll jump easier into contacts where it's interactive. They're giving you the opportunity to learn more about them. They're sharing with you what their motivation is. That contact then graduates to showing you their intent to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, they drop into that next piece of the funnel, which is cultivate. So your contacts could be in your database for a week, or they could be in your database for a year before they actually drop down into that lower piece of the funnel for cultivate. And now they're really showing you that they have an intent to buy, sell, or invest, and they're starting to make those steps and put those pieces into place to be able to actually make a purchase. And I'm going to say make a purchase because we're going to be focusing on buyers today. 6.37% per year of your database should be showing you intent to buy, sell, or invest in real estate. That's a pretty good number. So if you back that out, the more people you put into the top of the funnel, the bigger your 6.37% will be, which is the importance of making sure that that number one piece of prospecting and marketing is happening every single day. If you don't do cultivate well, then that piece of setting the appointment, which drops down into the bottom of the funnel, is harder to make that happen. As soon as they're showing you intent, that's when you should be asking for the appointment. And we're going to encourage people here that as soon as they show that intent, like maybe they're opening their listing cart more frequently and you are watching that. So you're seeing, oh my goodness, they're actually looking at the properties that I'm sending them. They're favoriting them. They're asking me more questions about the market and about pricing. And hey, I hear the market looks good. Those are the clues that you're listening for, that they're showing you, I have intent right now. Great. Now let's set the appointment and actually ask for them when's a good time for them to sit down, or can you meet Tuesday or Thursday? I have openings at 2 o'clock both days. It's a good reminder too in the cultivate to get to the appointment that the cultivate part is you're always reminding them that you're the agent. I'm your agent. If you have a real estate related question, I'm your best resource. It's your job to do that. It's not their job to remember that you're there. So using all of the tools that you have available to reach out to them in the cultivate part will make getting the appointment easier, like you're emailing them, you're texting them. I'm going to say it, you're picking up the phone and calling and talking to them. People do still want to talk on the phone. You're reaching out to them on Facebook, and you're reminding them there that you are a real estate agent. The more that you're doing that, the more that you'll be able to cultivate and actually get the appointment and get in front of them. Hope that makes sense. And feel free, folks, to jump in at any point, any time. The next part here is role modeling and settling the appointment. And so here I'm going to encourage you guys to, open up your script book. There is a buyer consultation section. I think it's on around page 18. Read those, practice those. The importance of practicing them with other people, with your family, with your friends, with other agents in the market center, is that then you won't be practicing when someone is actually showing you intent, that you're not stumbling to actually make that set that appointment, and you're listening for clues. Oh, you need more space. Oh, you're thinking of downsizing. Oh, I'm not used to having so many people in the house, and now we're all remote learning and we're working from home. Those are the clues that you're listening for to setting the appointment. And it's like showing you, hey, I'm thinking of investing. Great, I'm so happy. Let's meet so to see what you're looking for, to see how I can help you. Get the appointment, learn what their wants and needs are as much ahead of time, and then when you get to the table, you'll be learning more and getting into relationship. Does anyone have any questions on how to ask for the appointment? Anything along those lines?
Yes, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just not sure if we had a script for that, where we can actually, what
To
we're
set the
supposed to be saying.
appointment?
Yeah.
So I'm pretty direct on that. If I'm talking to someone and they're saying, my house is crowded. We're really cramped here. We never thought we'd be short on space, but here we are. Then get into curiosity and then start asking them questions. Well, tell me more about that. How does not having enough space impact your family right now? How many bedrooms are in your house right now? 3 bedrooms? What would a 5-bedroom house look like? What would your life look like if you had a 5-bedroom house?
Okay.
Have you spoken to a lender about that? There's a lot of really great opportunities out there for a 5-bedroom home. And now you also have your MLS up, hopefully, and you're looking, okay, you're in Dover, New Hampshire, and I'm seeing right now that there's 12 houses on the market in Dover, New Hampshire with 5 bedrooms.
Okay.
When's a good time for us to sit down and talk about that? And I like to give people 2 options and just say, when's a good time for us to talk about that? I have 2 openings in my schedule this week, Wednesday at 2 or Thursday at 5. And then they'll probably go, I'm not really sure. And just say, great, why don't we take Thursday at 5? I'm going to put that in my calendar right now. Will your husband be there at that time?
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, it does.
Andrew, another great way to just keep driving towards having that face-to-face conversation. And I think Laura Ryan from Vermont was talking about, she referenced to it was, there's a gentleman that always uses, Andrew, that's exactly why we should meet. Whether the response was negative or positive, you just want to keep saying, that's why we need to talk. That's why I need to sit with you so we can discuss getting you into your next home or why the finances aren't lining up. That's exactly because we just want to set the appointment because we know we'll be at our best when we're face-to-face with them. And whether it's on Zoom or at the kitchen table, we know it's the words we choose, our tonality, and then our body language. So getting face-to-face is important, and just driving it home with, that's exactly why we should get together, Andrew. So it's always positive, and it's always about the next step, which is meeting in person.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
I think too that when it's hard to not try to get to the last page when you really have to start flipping the first page. If your goal really is to get the appointment, then focus your affirmations or whatever you're practicing prior to making your calls to just asking for the appointment. Then you can worry about the, getting them to sign the buyer agency once you're at the kitchen table.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Does anybody else have something differently that they're doing that's worked really well?
When you set up the appointment, make sure if there's the other person's going to be there, make sure they're also going to be the decision maker as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's the real key thing. And then in today's day and age, I would use the word spouse or partner so you don't upset anybody. So just wording, to be careful, because you don't know the other buyer,
Mm-hmm.
Just,
Yep, absolutely.
Just kind of figure that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the more you learn, sometimes you can learn about those things while you're nurturing those contacts before you're asking for the appointment. But if you don't, absolutely, you want to make sure that all the parties are going to be at the table. Because if they say, well, I can meet Monday, but my wife won't be there till Tuesday, then focus on getting the Tuesday. Okay. So you get the appointment, and now you get to prepare your buyer presentation. And so we're having as you're preparing for the buyer presentation, you're going to want to have some kind of preset goals on what you're looking to get. I know when I'm getting ready for any buyer presentation, my number one goal is that I want to get buyer agency signed. I want to bring value to that presentation and to that contact so that they are going to be really wanting to sign that buyer agency agreement. And then we'll get into during the buyer presentation, how do you do that? But having some objectives, like there's a ton of objectives that you can have for a buyer presentation, like how am I going to bring value? How am I going to determine their motivation? Demonstrating your expertise, qualifying them, and then building your presentation around that. So there's lots of different ways that you can create the presentation. Some people may already have something designed. You may have done a PowerPoint, or you may be doing it, if it's an in-person, it may be all on paper. You may be bringing a tablet. If you don't have a buyer presentation, you can use Command and go to the designs section of Command to create your buyer presentation. If you're going to be doing that, I really encourage you to personalize it. You want to be making sure throughout the whole presentation that they have your contact information, your name. You may be already into branding with them if you've been sending them marketing electronically. So if you have a logo, your picture, things of that nature, you can use designs or whatever you're using to create that presentation to put those pieces in there. You can, if you're not super great on designs in Command, then my favorite part is that little question mark with the circle around it on the top right hand corner. Go to that, type in how to make a buyer where is there a buyer presentation in designs. It will actually lead you right to that. There's also a resource at answers.kw.com. If you are in the position where you don't know what to do or where to go, then you can go to answers.kw.com. If you know what you want to do and you want to build that presentation, go right to Command and go to that question mark. The other piece I would say is if you get stuck on where to find your resources for building a presentation, just ask for help. Reach out to your productivity coach, reach out to your team leader, your tech person, another agent, your Facebook Market Center page, something to have someone help you get in the right path. There are pre-made presentations in design, so you can just use that and modify it, or you can just create one from scratch. And so for the buyer presentation, we're going to walk through some steps to help you put the pieces together. Does someone have a question? Sorry, I thought I heard someone, but feel free if you have one, just jump right in and interrupt and unmute yourself. We're going to talk about some key components to building a buyer presentation. We're not going to actually build it here for you, but as you're taking notes or looking into what is going to work for you for a buyer presentation, there's some pieces that you're definitely going to want to make sure you slip in there. What I like about going through the presentation this way is that this is going to help you to build a buyer presentation. It's also going to be giving you some tools in your arsenal so that you can pull them out even as you're meeting somebody at the store, or you're making those calls to your contacts to maybe pull out, how can I add value? How can I add? You can also always pull out your presentation if they're starting to show intent and ask them these types of questions that might be in this table of contents area. There are 7 components. Notice that they are all related to the buyer. They're not about you. So we're always wanting to show value. We're wanting to show our expertise, our knowledge, but we're going to be doing that in a way where our language is saying, you're the most important piece of this puzzle here. So we have your dream home. And, what does that look like? I love talking about a dream home. Because it will help open up, maybe what are they lacking right now that they don't have? And then you can build on the pieces of their dream home to prioritize those. It's a super competitive market. And I do always like to bring buyers back to, there's never always a perfect house that's going to have every single thing that you want in it necessarily, especially if you have 2 people with very different wants and needs. But you can definitely blend what their most important pieces are if you're helping to prioritize what are the components of their dream home. And you're doing that with your preferences. Is it a 2-car garage that you really want? Is it a neighborhood? Is it that home office because now you're working from home everywhere? Is it your neighborhood? And is your neighborhood as important as it used to be, depending on if you're a first-time home buyer looking to start a family, or if you're downsizing or retiring, your neighborhood might be less important. So asking a lot of questions about each of those pieces is really important. So you're definitely going to want a section on your neighborhood. Buying 101, love that part. You're the expert. That's where you're really going to be able to dig into what the process looks like. It's going to help you be able to pull out their motivation and qualify them. Are they a ready, willing, and able buyer? The able part is super important. There's a lot of ready and willing buyers, but can they actually write an offer today? That will help you with what we categorize buyers as A, B, or C buyers. If you're an A buyer, you're ready to buy, you're willing to buy, and you are able to buy. You've met with the lender, you qualify, we know what your purchase capacity is, and you're able to actually write an offer if we find the right house for you. At your service. And then what's your promise? What are you going to promise these people? You're going to be delivering to them, your service. You may or may not be charging for that. We will talk about that. Getting a buyer to pay a portion of your buyer agency fee. That's not necessarily in the presentation through Ignite 2.0, but I like to toss that in because we are in a time where sometimes buyers may be needing to pay a portion of commission. So your promise is going to be really important because if you are going to be asking for them to contribute to any commission, you're going to have to deliver and earn that. And then a glossary. So we won't get into the glossary too much, but you're going to want to make sure that as you're speaking to your buyers, you're using their language and not the 5,000 acronyms that we have in the real estate world, like CMAs and DOMs, and they have no idea what that is, and you're going to visibly see them gloss over. So making sure that we're using their language is important. Feel free to jump in if anyone has a question on the table of contents. So we're going to break it down into, we're going to start with your dream home. The thing about a buyer presentation and sitting around a table is a lot of times the buyers are going to come in and they might be really nervous. They may feel like this is a really formal process. This is your opportunity to lighten the mood, to get them to smile, get them to laugh, to build rapport. We're starting our presentation with all of this type of information and information gathering because the last part of the presentation is really going to be pulling out your buyer agency forms. When they're ready to actually sign those, you've really earned the right to ask for them to sign it because you've spent a lot of time up front with all of these questions. So, your dream home, visualize your dream scenarios for buying your home. Your needs-driven drive how and when we find your next home. From this day forward, everything I do will be motivated by your goals and how you imagine your life taking place in your new home. You're really wanting them to get a picture of what does that look like. Once I get an understanding of where you see yourself finding your dream home, we'll move quickly and with minimal interruption to your daily life. So what we're saying here is we're kind of preparing them, like, let's really dig deep. You're going to take good notes on everything that they say about their dream home, because during the process, you're going to need to pull that list out to find out if those things changed as they've started to look through and learn more about the market. What's the one thing that has to happen to make that dream scenario a reality? Fantastic question. This is where, these questions on the right side of that slide will really help you pull out what they're looking for, what has to happen. It's your job to line up those dominoes, because you don't want to have them say, Susan, I found 5 homes. Can we set appointments? I want to go see them tomorrow, until we really know what these wants and needs are for them. Because taking them into a home that is not going to work for them based off of the things that they've already told you is really just a waste of everyone's time. So, what's the things that I can do to happen that can make your dream scenario a reality? How can I make that happen for you? Love this question. Why is that important to you? If they're saying I need a fenced-in yard, great. Why is that important to you? And then this next one really is my favorite question on the whole slide. If we could add just one more thing to make this process even better, what would it be? My pause right now was intentional, because that's what I'd like to see you do during your presentation. That's like a mic drop kind of question. If we could add just one more thing to make this process even better, what would it be? Your tone changes, your smile on your face might change, but it's an awesome question. And then again, why is that important to you? So it's going to help dig out and pull out from them. If you don't already know what type of buyer it is, it's going to help answer that question. The purpose of these questions is so that you're having a conversation, a two-way conversation, and it's not, it shouldn't look like you're filling out a form where you have your pen out and you're saying, okay, are you a first-time buyer? And you're checking that off. Have you already talked to a lender? And you're checking that off. This presentation is really built to keep the communication going both ways. And then how can I make that happen for you? If there's more than one buyer, you need to make sure that you're getting the answers to these questions from both of them, or if there's 3 of them, from all 3 of them. Any questions on this piece of it? It's a super awesome kind of way to break the ice with people.
So you have a question in that Bill asked, what's the craziest answer you've gotten to that question? How can we make this better for you? You can include a Ferrari. Yeah. Like,
you can
I get a marching band to march by when we sign the papers.
Yeah, right?
Hey, that would be great. So you might need to gear up some music on Pandora or something, if that's a question. I think the funniest one I got is that I want to make sure that I'm in this town, but I don't want to be in this neighborhood because that's where my mother-in-law lives.
Yeah, I like her.
And that's important.
Yeah.
That's important to know.
I love that you talked about, all the way you did the mic drop at the end. Presuming at that point you've overwhelmed them with value, they're usually stunned. They're like, I can't think of anything else you could possibly do. One of the smartest questions we can ask at the onset, and you touched on it, is really just, rather than going through the litany and the bullet points of all the things that we intend to do for them, just simply asking, what are you looking for in a great agent?
Yep.
What do you require from a great agent? And let them just, they're probably going to say 3 of the 19 things that you've got on deck to show them, but then you can lean into those a little bit more. So then when you do ask that mic drop question of what is one more thing that we could add to make this an exemplary experience, and then they're completely blown away, because people don't treat their business side of their business like business people, unfortunately. So if we can lean into that, especially now where we definitely have more buyers than we have inventory, which is all our fault, but we'll talk about that later. It's a great way to get that conversation started.
Yep, very true, very true. Because part of this presentation is that we're wanting to build loyalty here. We want to get through this presentation so that when they have a question on a property, because you have to be realistic. Your buyers are online looking all of the time. We're also using this presentation as an opportunity to train them without them knowing that we're training them, that when they have a question about any property, about any real estate related question, you're on their speed dial. They have to reach out to you first. And that's that great question. What's the one thing I could do to make this a better process for you? And then do it. So make sure that you're listening when they answer you, when you're writing that down. And it's great for them to see you writing that down, because you're showing them that what they're saying is important to you. For sure. So we're going to go to building your preference profile. So this is important. We're really setting expectations here on communication. The communication piece is super important. I don't know how many of you guys out there have done the Tony Robbins disc. Anyone? I'm a DS.
Done YouTube.
Do it. If you haven't done it, stop saying you're going to do it, and put it in your calendar and go do it.
Yeah.
We'll put the link in the chat. They're gonna have you register with an email. Don't worry, Tony Robbins people. They're not super spammy. You're not going to get a bunch of junk mail. And when you get the link back, they'll send you your results back to you, and take it to your market center productivity coach. If you don't have a relationship with a coach, happy to go over it with you. Erin or myself can go over it with you, so you have a better understanding. We're all 18 plus here. We know how we're wired. It's having that better understanding of where you fall on the disc and how you communicate well and how you communicate with others is important.
It is. And so why I really want to bring up the disc is because it's good to know what style you are, but it's 10 times more important to identify what type of style your audience is. So building this profile is really an opportunity to set communication expectations. If you're meeting with someone and you can identify that you have two people sitting across from you, one is very direct. They don't want a lot of words in their communication. They want facts. I want you to know that I want this many bedrooms, this many bathrooms. I only want to see this many houses. How much is it going to cost? And let's move forward or not move forward. But their person that they're with, they might be the opposite. They might be somebody that wants to talk about everything. They might want to be expressing their feelings about everything, which is totally going to annoy the other person. So now you have to put your therapist hat on and make sure that you're communicating with both people in the way that they want to be communicated with, so that you're making them feel heard, you're making them feel valued, and you're able to, that will help them have confidence in you. Then being super direct too. Well, how do you like to be communicated with? Because, I still have people, I'm going to say other agents right now, that will leave me voicemails. I don't listen to my voicemails. I think the majority of people are not listening to their voicemails, but you might be sitting across the table from somebody that wants a phone call and listens to their voicemail. So texting them is not going to build you much rapport. So find out, do they want to be texted? Do they want to be called? Do they want to be emailed? Do they want you to build a spreadsheet on what we're looking at so that they have just data to look at? Ask the questions, and then also, find out who, as you're talking to them, you're going to want to find out which one of them is really the decision maker, because the husband might be doing all of the talking. 80% of the time in my business, I feel, it's really the wife that's making the decision. They have sometimes a smaller voice verbally, but they really hold the power a lot of the times in what's going to happen. So you got to pull that out of them. Find out who the decision maker is, and if they're equal, they're equal. Text is good for some quick communication. But I'm really going to encourage you guys during this whole presentation. There are many times during the buying process where you've got to pick up the phone and call and have a verbal conversation. Everything is moving so quickly that having anything misheard during text could mean you win or lose a house. And building the preferences and talking about communications and setting those expectations, if you're talking to someone that really is just a texter, you're going to have to explain to them the importance of, great, we're going to text during this part, but when we have something important to talk about, we're going to have to get on the phone. The other piece of
James
setting.
just asked, Susan, James just asked in the chat, I trust he's joking. He wanted to know what a voicemail was. And Marie just chimed in and said, text does not show emotion. Our operating principle here, Nathan Dickey, if you are incapable of picking up the phone to have the conversation, you should not be sending a text or an email. It will always bring down the emotion or the excitement in our conversation. Will always get ramped down when we pick up the phone and have a conversation with somebody. So it's always best to do that for sure. And back to your point about texting and the extraction of emotion and tonality when we do text. I always joke about the fact that, if you cut somebody off in traffic and they scream, "Hey, you," it's very different than a girl at a bar looking over and saying, "Hey, you," like that. Those are just two different "hey, yous," right? Like, is she flipping me off, or is she about to buy me a drink? And that gets lost in translation. And the last thing we want to do in a business of communication is fall flat on that. So we've got to be really good about communicating. And if they do want to text, that's fine, because your high D, high C, that classic engineer husband or engineer in general might want it short and sweet. At the same time, we do need to make sure we're picking up the phone and we're being super clear. Yeah. And I would argue, especially in our co-broke conversations, always following up with an email. After I've had a verbal conversation with somebody about...
don't get me going on co-broke conversations. That's a whole nother presentation.
We won't, but you know what I mean. Yes.
You know I'm slipping it in there today. I
follow with an email just in case the commission calls. That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. And the thing too, what I love about, every page on this presentation is super important. But what I love about this page is you're letting them know the importance of communication, that I'm your communicator here. I'm driving this bus. You also can set the expectation of when they can communicate back to you. We always want to move quickly without rushing, and I always want to be there for my clients, but they need to understand that I have a life too, and that is okay. So if they're going to be texting me at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, or I go to church, so if it's a Sunday morning, I'm not going to be getting back to them. But you have to let them know that. Otherwise, they're going to be sending you a text and being like, oh my God, Susan's not getting back to me. What the heck? What if I lose this house? They have a whole different set of stress going on in their life. So having these expectation builders here is really great and really important. The other thing I'm going to say on the whole texting piece is sometimes they don't go through, or the voicemail didn't go through. If you have something important to say, text them. If they don't get back to you, pick up the phone and call and make sure they got that. And that's going to be with a co-broke too. We're focusing on buyers, but I'm definitely going to bring it back to them. Don't assume somebody got your communication if there's a timeline built into whatever the content of your communication is. And I always let my buyers know, especially right now where they're stressed out because the competition is fierce. It's incredible. They may have already put in offers and lost them. So I'm letting them know that, hey, if we're negotiating something or we saw a property and we're putting an offer in, you have me at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night. You absolutely do. But if you do text me at 9 or 10 o'clock at night and ask me how many square feet that living room was, it's going to wait until the beginning of the next workday. But just know that when it is urgent and we are in that moment of time that we need that instant communication at 9 o'clock at night, you'll have me. And I find that most people appreciate that, and they expect me to have a life too. If they don't, that's you're going to have to find a way to work through that. And sometimes you might have a buyer that's really challenging that doesn't understand that. And then I say, get them under contract and you own them for the next 60 days, and then you won't have that problem anymore. Work harder to get them under contract. So you're going to set up, have you considered who my main contact will be? That's a great question, because if one of them is working all day and doesn't have the ability to answer texts or answer questions, and you're trying to set up showings, know who you have to go to get those questions answered during the day. You're establishing your timeline. What timeline would you like to strive for? I might be thinking, this is a really urgent buyer. They have to be someplace within 60 days. And they're like, yeah, if I could be there by May, that'd be great. Really important to know. Because then you're going to be getting into how to be a strong buyer conversation. So that piece is important too. Have you thought about the price range you'd like to be comfortable with? It's really important when you're building your preference profile. The thing about buyers and the buyer presentation and talking about your price range, this is a moving piece. There's a saying that I'm sure all of you heard, and I actually really hate the saying. It's called buyers are liars. And the reason I don't like it is that I don't think that their intent is to be liars. It's just that when you're building this profile, when you first meet them, they only want to spend $350,000. So they're going to tell you my price range is $350,000 to $400,000. Once you're showing them the market and they're seeing what the market can bear, they might be a $400,000 or $450,000 buyer. So a lot of times they don't know what their end preference is going to be. We're starting at the beginning with them. So have some, it's a fluid piece as you're going through the process. I had a really awesome, lovely young couple where during our buyer presentation, their very first thing the both of them said was, what I do not want is a box colonial in a new neighborhood. Guess what they bought? A box colonial in a new neighborhood. I showed them farmhouses because that's exactly what they wanted. But as you walk through the process with them and they're realizing all the things that will go with those older homes that have so much charm and character, and you're realizing that they have no skills to fix anything, they have no time to fix anything, they have money to fix stuff, then you're walking them through that process and they might end up actually flip-flopping on what this profile says. So have some fluid around that. If I found a home today that checked all of your boxes, could you see yourself making a move sooner rather than later? This is really going to help you determine if this is an A buyer or not an A buyer, because this might be when the really quiet person at the table said, honey, I really don't want to move them out of the school district until, until June. Okay, now our timeline changed. So we have to really find out, we're meeting today, or are you really going to, if we find the right home, are you going to be ready to put an offer in? And then, of course, you're going to want to know if they have money to actually purchase. So you're going to get into that too. Pre-qualifying them, that's in another slide later, I believe. So we'll save that for a few slides down. What is your favorite way to receive information or updates? Email, call, text. What is the best time to reach you? Morning, noon, afternoon, evening, anytime? So this is a great question. What's the best time for me to reach you? However, it's also a good time if you are somebody that lead generates to say, the best time for you to reach me is after 11 or after 11:30. Because I know that that's my lead gen time, and I want them to know that that's the best time that they'll have a chance of getting a hold of me. So it's okay to kind of make this question that's about them to also be about you. As updates arise, how often do you prefer to be notified? ASAP, in a few hours that day, or every few days. So we're in a market right now that if they're not checking ASAP, then they might not be an A buyer, because if they're not looking at updates, if they're somebody that you're looking at taking shopping, if they're not looking at the updates immediately, they're going to miss out on properties, and then you're kind of wasting time. But definitely, if we found the perfect home tomorrow, would that be too soon for you? is a great question. I also hear him communicating that I'm building a team for you. It's not just me. We're an A team here. So that means you've got me. If you're on a team and you're new, use your team. Our team leaders are here for you. They have X number of years in the business. They are our go-to if you can't reach me. Your lender, if they have a lender that they're using, if you're also putting them in touch with for a second opinion on your preferred lender, which you definitely should be doing, giving them a second so that they have a second opinion, that is part of a team. Your inspector is part of your team. There's a lot of pieces to this. You're letting them know that you're going to be also communicating with all of those folks on their behalf. If you don't like direct questions, this page is telling you, too bad. Ask the direct question anyway. The more you ask direct questions, the easier it gets, and it also is helping you to take charge and drive the bus here. And also, making sure that just for the very basics on the building the profile, you have all their contact information, name, phone, address, email, when, why, and how to be talked to. Any other questions or something else that people might add on to like the building the profile piece here? No? Okay, we'll keep going to your home wish list. Oh, this is so much fun. Buyers can be so much fun to work with. They're really going to be lightening up when we get to these kinds of slides for them. Ask the questions to understand what their wants and needs are. Spend a lot of time with the buyer on this. I like to leave to learn a lot about you now so that we can maximize our time in the field. That's a great one-liner script. If they're not sure what they want, then it's okay to kind of pause here and let them know, I want to spend a lot of time here with you now so that when we are out in the field, I can maximize your time. Or so that when we are out in the field and things are moving quickly, I'm better able to help you. So the must-haves, this is where you may have somebody that has, what, I just need 3 things. I need this many bedrooms, this many bathrooms, and I need a garage. If those are their top 3 things, and then that kind of makes your house hunting a little bit easier. It's when they have a list of 15 to 20 that you might have to now start doing a little bit more work on reining them in and helping them prioritize that. Because as you're looking through the market with them, you may have to say, okay, this house hits 8 of your must-haves. What if this 9th and 10th aren't in there? How will that look for you? Does the fact that the kitchen, which was your number 1, make it easier, make this house a fit for you? Let me see, I have a couple other notes on this. How long will they be there? The first-time buyers, smaller must-haves because they will get more with their move-up house. So I put that note down on this slide because knowing if this is a house that they're not going to be in forever should help you pare down the wish list, especially if their wish list is really long and because you've talked to their lender or you've talked to them about their budget, that finding the house with everything in their wish list is going to not match their budget. This is where it's a great conversation to say, okay, well, if we found your top 5 of those, knowing that you're probably going to be here for 2 or 3 years, which one of those items on your list could be in your move-up house? And that could be a garage. A first-time home buyer might be able to live without a garage. What is the most important room in the house? I call this my Jesse Davies question because he taught me this question. Ask what their favorite room is in the house, and hopefully both people will agree on the same room. And the reason that it's important to do this is because when you go shopping, even if the co-broke is there, that should be the first house that you go to, even if the master bedroom is their number 1 room in the house. Why? Because buyers make a decision on whether or not they want to move forward with that home within a minute of walking into that house. So you want to go to the most important room first. If the most important room is the master bedroom, and you get to the master bedroom and there is no walk-in closet, and that's their number one, you're done. You don't have to spend another 20 minutes in the house. You go and you move on to the next one, politely to your co-broke, but it's a great way to actually figure out if that home's going to work for them. Likewise, if I'll just flip-flop this to if you are a listing agent and you have a buyer come in, I'm a little bit of a control freak, so I like to jump in and show the house if I'm the listing agent first. I ask that buyer, welcome, I'm glad you're here. What's the most important room to you guys? The master bedroom? Great, let's go look at that first, and then we can circle back to the kitchen and all the other rooms. Find out first if it's going to work for them. As they're building the wish list, you know, who will be living in the home? Is it a list of adults? Is it children? Is it pets? Is it is there going to be parents or elderly people there? What are the non-negotiables for your home? If you had to name your top 5 non-negotiables, what would they be? Really, really, really important. Beyond your top 5, then what is something that you really want? Do you have a preference for the year the house was built? Here's a great example of this. I've had buyers just recently where we determined that they really needed a house that was within 5 years old, or because they weren't handy at all. Not only were they not handy, the thought of opening up a paint can like made them throw up in their mouth. They did not want anything to do with it. They never wanted a maintenance problem. So I knew right there, we're not looking at anything with clapboard siding. I'm not looking at any old houses. I'm not looking at anything without composite decking. This will help save time as you're starting to do your house search. Do you want a house that's move-in ready, or are you willing to do some work on it? When people visit your home, what do you want it to say about you? So you might find out you have a big entertainer here. That's really important to know before you go shopping. Are there any specific features that would make your next house feel instantly like home? A clawfoot tub, a fenced-in backyard, a patio, a place that I can have anything like that. People will surprise you. And then will you require accessibility options? So really important to know if are they going to have somebody that's frequently coming to their house that needs one floor access to a bathroom or something like that. What's really great about this wish list is, we want to make sure that we're not wasting folks' time. So as you finish the buyer presentation, they sign buyer agency with you, they're starting to look at their listing cart online. You can get online with them and go through the listing cart, have their wish list open while you're doing it, go through the pictures, remind them of the things that they've said. Well, you said when we first met that you didn't want to have to do some work on the house. As I'm flipping through the pictures, I'm seeing maintenance issues here. I'm seeing that the roof doesn't look like it's going to be last another 5 years. I'm reading the property disclosures and pointing those pieces out to them. That may make them just cross that off the list, which is way better to do when you're sitting at the computer looking through photos rather than after you've spent the time setting up showings, went on a drive to go see the house, have them look outside and go, oh yeah, the roof needs to be repaired. This is a no for me. So the wish list is very important, and it also, you can change it over time. Square feet are the things that you might want to bring up and talk about them with is, how much square feet do they need? The bedrooms issue is a really big issue right now where people are remote learning and working from home. If they're buying, that may be a consideration. You're going to want to make sure that the home has a need, fills that need if that's there. Small children, elderly, do they want something rural? Do they need a yard? One thing that's important with the wish list and when you're starting to look online with your listing cart is don't judge a house by what you want. All buyers are different. Some of my buyers buy things that perplex me that they would want it, but it's not about me, it's about them. So we want to listen more than we talk. And then after each showing, ask and let them know. I'm going to ask you after each showing 9 or 10 to rate each house, a 9 or 10. If they say that they love it as a 9 or a 10, if you say that, then we're going to be wanting to write an offer. So they're giving you the wish list. you're now setting them up that when we look at homes, we're looking at them with the intent of wanting to write an offer. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, Sue, I was just gonna, you're making me chuckle to myself over here because I'm thinking like, this is such a big idea, this idea that you are not going to live in the house. I think we want to do our due diligence as agents and kind of recognize things that deferred maintenance and big issues with homes, but stylistically, and as a listing agent, I've heard buyer's agents basically rip apart a house, and I could tell the buyers really liked it, right? You know,
what are you doing?
Yeah, well, they walked in and they're like, oh my gosh, they love, and you could hear them chatter, and then their agent comes around the corner and is like, ooh, this, right? And then it doesn't, you're kind of confirming their fears, right? Especially this whole, like, buyers are really nervous, right? Like you keep saying. So yeah, I think that whole like listening and remembering you're not going to live there.
Right.
It may not matter to them that there's a bedroom in the basement and they're not all upstairs, right? Like those are things I hear people comment about. So I just thought that was that's a really big aha.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. You know, even lake homes, I have a buyer right now that I'm trying, you know, them and everybody else would love a lake home for $300,000. But when I've shown some of the houses that I've shown them, they really only care about the lake. They don't care that the walk to get down to the lake is so steep that in my head, I'm like, I would never want to have to walk that. But they're like, yeah, that doesn't bother us. Great, that's good to know, because if it doesn't bother you, it doesn't bother me. It's all about them. What I like about the wish list too is after you're done with the wish list, and take your time with this. None of this should ever be rushed. Ask them that question and let them know, I'm going to be asking you after each house that we see to rate it. If it's a 9 or a 10, then we're going to want to put an offer in. And in this market, if it's a 9 or 10, we're going to want to move quickly. And this is where you might see a little puckering happen with a buyer, especially a first-time home buyer. They might be like, oh my God, put an offer in. And then I give them some ease and I say, when that happens, when you have a 9 or a 10, we're going to move quickly without rushing. And then stop and have a pause. Let them take a breath. But you need to educate them that if you find a 9 or a 10 and we don't move quickly, you'll lose the opportunity to even put an offer in. So that's my advice on that one. Definitely start preparing them. You're wanting to learn about them, but our goal here is to get a buyer agency agreement signed and then to get them under contract. So when you're doing the wish list and when you're showing properties, you are always selling. You're wanting them to get the right home, but you're always in a position of selling. This is a sales job, people. Okay. Jump in if anyone has any questions, because I know I can rattle on and on. Neighborhood insights. So for neighborhood insight, oh yeah, sure.
So I just put it in the chat, but I'm not sure how often they check that. So the days that we're living in right now, where offers are like done in 10 seconds, what can you make an offer on more than one property at a time? Are you guys doing that? Or I mean, I don't know how that would work. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Never ever.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I thought that would be ridiculous, but I didn't know in today's age where there's so many people competing over a property, how that works.
That is a fantastic question. Thank you for asking that, because I really tried to put some thought into what to bring up, but that is a fantastic one because your buyers are going to ask you to do that. So okay, I have a few thoughts on that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say it seemed like a dumb question at the time because I'm like, well, that would commit to multiple properties. Why would they do that? But I didn't know if anybody else thought of they're not the experts either, so maybe they would ask you to do that.
Yeah. So we have gotten that question even just very recently, and my answer to them is, well, we really can't do that because you do also have the chance that both of those could get accepted, and you can't be under contract for two properties at the same time. Then I also want to give you a different perspective on that. It's a lot of time for you to be writing offers. What if they do both get accepted? It's also not, from an ethical standpoint, it's not the right thing to do to your co-brokes. And that is really important in this market and in any market. When we're working with our buyers and sellers, we have to remember that your reputation in the marketplace will help determine whether your future buyers' offers get accepted. If you start doing things like putting offers in on more than one property, and then you go back and tell them they actually went with another property, the next time you show a buyer that agent's house, they're going to remember that. Your the likelihood of your offer getting accepted in the future could be impacted.
Aaron just mentioned that you could put a response time. So you could put a really short response time, but I always thought doesn't the seller have 5 days to accept, or do you negotiate that time frame for them to accept your offer?
I'm going to be careful because I know we have multiple states here. I'm going to say, and even I'm licensed in New Hampshire and Maine, and it can be different there based off of your offer. So it really, know your, I hope y'all are going to contracts class. If you're not, go to contracts class every week. I still go every single week to contracts class. Know what your rules are, because it's important, when we're walking the buyers through this, they're worried about their home search. You have to be worried about the compliance piece of the contracts that you're writing for them. And when they're asking those kind of questions, that's when you can let them know, no, we can't write an offer on more than one property. It would obligate you to 2 houses if they both got accepted. There is a compliance issue with real estate law that doesn't allow us to do that. So that a lot of times I've seen buyers go, oh, okay, that makes sense. So you can put a timeline on an expiration date. I also am very careful about that too, because it's very aggressive to put an expiration date on an offer. I'm not a fan of that. I don't mind seeing the buyer respectfully requests a response by date and time, but make it reasonable. If you're submitting it at 3 o'clock, don't make it for that night. As much pressure as your buyer is under, the seller's under just as much pressure.
Right, okay.
You want to be, so now we're kind of moving into writing an offer, and I'm going to go there for a minute, even though we're on buyer presentation, because I just can't help myself.
Well, you make a great point, Susan, and I agree that it's a great tool to have. It's a great arrow to have in our quip to be able to the buyer requests the response at a certain time. I'd stay away from 12 noon and midnight. It's like you're trying to pick a fight behind a dumpster at recess. It's a very high noonish. And I want to give them a window. Annie, though, at the same time, I also I appreciate the time stamping a request, a response in a certain time frame, so your buyers aren't handcuffed going into the weekend. Although right now, and we always hear it on HGTV, which is the worst network on American television, probably overseas as well, but we don't have time to go down that road. HGTV is teaching everyone highest and best. And I'd love for you guys to change your language to highest and cleanest. Right? Highest is the amount, the monetary value that your buyer feels is appropriate for the home. And cleanest is they're not asking for a myriad of things. If there's a ton of bullet points and one of them is a timestamp, when everybody else is willing to give the seller time to think about it, right? Because we always want to remind our sellers, how would you feel as the buyer? And the buyers, how would you feel as the seller? So it's a win-win for everybody. And in the same line of thinking, Susan makes a great point as well. Don't forget the 80-20 rule. 20% of the agents are doing 80% of the business. And until we are in relationship with somebody, whether it's a client, whether it's a co-broke at another office, all they have is our reputation. And if you become the person who is always time stamping or just, writing offers because it feels good. And then you're pulling back and pulling out of deals because, we moved in another direction. We want to be business people, and we want to know that we're going to keep running into the same 20% over and over and over again. And we want to come from contribution and build a culture that other people would want to come play in. So let's be mindful of that too, as KWers. We are independent contractors, yet we're all wearing the same cape. And for our market center up here, there's 660 of us. So there's a lot of families that depend on all of us behaving at a really great level as business people when we're out and about writing deals.
I can totally appreciate that, and thank you. I guess I was getting at more of this whole inventory problem where people were, they're just not, they're having so many offers on a property and then having to act fast and then getting stressed out and feeling like they need to act fast on the next property. So there's just seems to be a lot of desperation out there, and I wondered if
can I give you a quick one-liner? A quick one-liner for that is, it sounds really to have well, let's work on being, no, we can't do that, and just be very direct, give them your quick reason why, and then redirect them. But let's talk about how to make you the strongest possible buyer. A strong buyer. Now, actually, you know what? That's an awesome question for them to ask, because now you can redirect them to how to be a strong buyer, and they're going to want to take your advice on that. Sometimes when you're talking to them on how to be a strong buyer, they might not want to do it yet. A perfect example of that is talking to a lender and getting pre-approved. They might be like, yeah, when I find the right house, I'll talk to a lender. Now they've asked this question. Now you go back, well, let's talk about that. That's a great question. We can't do it for these reasons. However, my job is to make you the strongest possible buyer. The way that we do that is by getting you pre-approved. The way that we do that is having you prepared to write a love letter. The way that we do that is by writing a very clean contract. The way that we do that is by having you sign my agreement today, because I'm a very strong agent in this market and I have a very good reputation. I work with all of these agents all of the time. The way that we do that is I write a co-broke love letter. So have your list of how to be a strong broker. And I do write a co-broke love letter. I don't know who taught me that one. Someone did. None of my thoughts are original, but I'm happy to take other people's when I can. I write a co-broke love letter. I let them know when I'm submitting an offer how great I'm going to be to work with. I let them know that I've coached my client on the inspection process. I've coached my client that we're not going to be asking for small things. I've coached them on the fact that they have already been in touch with a lender. That I'm easy to work with, that I want to build a team here, that I have a win-win attitude. So there's lots of things to make you a strong buyer so that we can get you into the right home. And your confidence will help you get past those kind of questions that are not great.
Thank you
I
so
love that you
much.
mentioned that, Susan, too, about the co-broke love letter. If you think about a great book from Simon Sinek, The Infinite Game, and it's really about the longevity of the long play of your business. And are you setting out to create a transactional business where you're looking to just cut the next deal, or is it about a legacy business? And if you want to do the infinite game with your clients, that's great. What about with your co-brokes? What about with the opportunity here at Keller Williams to build your growth tree for passive income for your grandchildren's grandchildren, So if we're always playing that long game and that legacy play for our business, we're going to approach our co-brokes and our clients differently. We're always going to approach every conversation differently if we're thinking of the infinite game. If you don't have the book, Simon Sinek, it's one of his greats. It's phenomenal.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that? I mean, great question. Thank you for asking it. Okay, so we'll flip back here to neighborhood insights. You can use your neighborhood snaps with Kelly or Command to get that information for your folks. What's good about neighborhood insights is, you can get, if it depends on your client too. Like if they're really interested in specific neighborhoods, and I know we're all coming from different places, so it might depend on what your market looks like. If they're looking for very specific neighborhoods, it gives you an opportunity, especially where we're in such a shortage of homes for sale to start navigating and investigating other similar neighborhoods. Find a lookalike neighborhood. It's a competitive market. If they like a specific neighborhood, find others that have those features. And then become curious. Well, what is it about that neighborhood that you really like? If I found another neighborhood that had those similar characteristics, would that work for you? And then, go to the MLS, run some comps for the different neighborhood. It may be, when you first start this presentation, the buyer presentation, that they're very specific to a couple of neighborhoods. As they dip their toes in the water and they're realizing how competitive it is, this is one of those pieces where they may change their mind. So have that in your notes in your database in command that they were neighborhood specific, but if you don't have much luck with those neighborhoods, have some searches ready to go in the MLS to show them what other similar neighborhoods might look like. And this is where that whole allowing their wants and needs to be fluid can be helpful. Jump in if anyone has a question. I'm really not looking at the chat, so if anyone has a question or sees a question, I'm just going to be transparent.
I have a question, Suzanne.
Hey.
Hi. I'm sorry, just going back a little bit and, making your client the best client for the offer. So yeah. I had a situation where, for me, I've never gone out with a buyer unless they're pre-approved to begin with, because I already told them that would be a waste of your time and waste of my time. So I submitted an offer. Client, of course, is pre-approved, and the co-broke told me that my client we offered more money for the house. The reason why they went with another buyer is because they weren't just pre-approved, they were approved. So can you explain? Right. I just thought that I didn't realize that if you could actually be fully approved without finding a house.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is where, we're always selling, right? And so part of the beginning of the slide, it wasn't even a slide, I think I might have just chucked it in there, was that we need to let our buyers know that we are building a team for them. But I don't want anyone to have a doubt. I lead the team. I'm in charge here, and that means I'm in charge of their lending. So we want to talk to them about the lending process, and we want to talk with their lender, with them. So you want your buyers to be approved. And now you also have to remember that not every co-broke understands the difference between pre-qualified, approved, fully approved. So that piece of maybe a co-broke love letter, and when you submit an offer, every single offer should be followed up with a phone call. Every single offer should go with a phone call, because you can't assume that that seller's agent knows what pre-approved is. So you want to have coached your buyer that, we're speaking with your lender. They're going to need this whole list of paperwork. And if you don't have the list of what they're going to need, whoever you partner with for your go-to lender, get that list from them. It's going to look like tax returns, bank statements, paycheck stubs, and credit reports. That's about off the top of my head what I'm thinking. They're going to need that information, because they can call a lender and they can get pre-qualified. Here's, I have a breath. Here's my credit score. Here, you're pre-qualified. But if your buyer has actually submitted documents, and so we're at the buyer presentation right now. We haven't gone and we haven't looked at the house. You're going to give your buyer this to do if they haven't done it already with their lender. They're going to go sit down with their lender. They're going to give all the docs that they have to the lender. They could even go to underwriting prior to going shopping for a house. That is what that other agent did that made that person's lender did that yours didn't do. Maybe yours did do it, but if you don't communicate that to the listing agent, it never happened. Okay. So how to be a strong buyer, that is, other than cash, that's one of the best ways to do that. It does a few things. It helps show that your buyer actually is qualified. It also lessens the time that you have to be under contract, because if they've already gone through the underwriting process, that like leapfrogs a whole week's worth of work for the lender. Right now, a whole week's worth of work, A whole week in the whole under contract process is like gold for some sellers. So a couple things. I would call the co-broke. I would find out what's important to the seller. And then when you're submitting the offer, if your buyer has done all of that work, you're writing that in your love letter. I'm happy to let you know that my buyer's already done all of these things. And then when you're calling, in case they didn't read, now we can't assume they're reading my love letter, you're calling them and letting them know, my buyer's actually already gone through underwriting, or they've already submitted all their docs, or they are approved, they're not just qualified. What that means is,
okay. Thank you. And in my case, of course, they did submitted all their docs. They just did not go through underwriting. So I just have to take that next step next time. Okay, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And if your lender's not doing that and not willing to do that, get a different lender.
Yep, definitely.
Okay. Because you really should be a team with whoever your go-to is.
Absolutely.
But it's still a great, you can still sell that they've already submitted all their docs, even if it hasn't been reviewed.
Okay.
But it would be a really great extra step if you could get them to submit it and get them through underwriting.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions?
I have a question.
I have a question
on that.
Yeah.
Yes, in regards to underwriting and somebody getting their fully approved, once they have that, how long does that last? 30 days, 45 days, 60 days in this market?
That's a great question for your lender.
Okay.
So, another piggyback off of that, if when you have a buyer that's willing to make those steps, part of your coaching is that you're letting them know that you're sending this all to your lender. They're looking at them. Now it's really important for you to stay quiet with your finances. Don't open any new lines of credit. Don't buy a car. Don't pay anything off. All of those things could impact where you're at. And what happens when we do a buyer presentation, we do the buyer presentation. And then if they haven't talked to a local lender, whether it's my preferred or if they've only talked to a national lender, I really encourage a local lender. They'll usually, there's scripts around that too on the value of a second opinion, the value of a seller's agent might wanting to see an offer might be stronger with a local lender. That's true when I'm the listing agent and I'm receiving one. Where was I going with that? Oh, the next thing that I do is I have a canned email in my email. I call it lender introduction. And I introduce my buyer to the lender. I CC the buyer on it. I'm giving them each other's contact information. I'm also letting that lender know some pertinent information about my buyer. I'm making it personal because we're in relationship. So we do now want to make sure that what we're doing now is personal. And it could be, Tim and Sally are looking to purchase a home in the Portsmouth, New Hampshire area. Their budget is $550,000. Their time frame is this. Can you please reach out to them for an opinion on their lending? So I'm also putting them in touch with that person at that time. And you can get that ball rolling while you're setting up searches in the MLS. You're starting to shop. And now you're getting that buyer to work for you. And mentally, they're now taking direction from you. And you want to keep that pattern up because they're going to need to continue to take direction from you as they're writing an offer, as they're choosing which houses that they want to go see. Does that help?
Susan, we have one more raised hand. Emma.
Sure.
Go ahead, Emma.
Hi. So I'm wondering, is it a good idea before making an offer to call the list agent and kind of get a read or a temperature check on how things are going? Have you had any offers? Because I know I just listed a house and I had a lot of people call me and ask me those questions, and where it was new, I just kind of winged it and I answered. But how much info can you ask for? And then on the flip side, as a list agent, how much info should you give? And then, second part of that question is, if you do get the question of, or can you ask, you know, how far over ask are you? And then as a list agent, what would you answer in that case? So can you talk to the, you know, answering the question of how much can the buyer agent ask, and how much should, if you're the list agent, how much info should you give? So if you can kind of do both sides of that.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And you can definitely kind of pull that into your buyer presentation by letting them know you're going to do that. Before making an offer, you should always call the listing agent and ask, well, what is the most important thing to your seller? It might not always be price. Sometimes you can gauge what might be important to the seller outside of price. For example, I helped a lady purchase a house this summer, and I asked a lot of questions to the list agent at the showing on her client. Now, they're not supposed to say anything. They shouldn't be telling you about motivation or anything that's confident. But that doesn't mean that they don't. I will not name names, but I know that there's certain agents I can ask what's their bottom line, and they're going to tell me. But you can get clues from your showing. So it could be if it's an older person in the house. In the scenario for me this summer was I found out that the seller was moving to Florida by herself. She was an older lady. So when I was going to make an offer, I called the agent and I, hey, Judy, what's going on with, your seller? Other than price, is there anything that's really important to them? Of course, they say no, or maybe they give something up. Then offer something that could be important to them. I know you mentioned your lady is moving to Florida by herself and doesn't want to have to take a lot of stuff. If my buyer offered for her to leave anything she doesn't want in the house, would that be a benefit to her? Yep, it was. And we weren't the highest offer, but we got the house because we told the seller she could leave anything in the house that she wanted to. I said she doesn't even have to empty her fridge if she doesn't want to.
Because
now the importance of this is you got to make sure that's okay with your buyer. Does that help? So if you have the buyer, ask the question anyway. If you have the seller, do not give away anything that's confidential or leads to their motivation. It's hard in this market because it is such a seller's market, especially if you know that there's other offers, or you have to assume that there's other offers at this point. But I would definitely ask the question. But during how to build that into your buyer presentation is when you're talking about how to be a strong buyer, give them that option, especially if you know their numbers are tight. Say, hey, there may be some scenarios where if we run into a house that kind of looks like this, we may look outside of the box in your offer. That kind of thing. If there's a lot of debris outside and that seller doesn't have to get rid of the debris outside, and you're selling it to a young, healthy, athletic couple that can make dump runs all day long, and that older seller doesn't have to get rid of all the crap that's behind the barn, yeah, that would be huge for a seller.
And that plays right back into, Susan, highest and cleanest, right? If I can call and say, hey, Susan, thanks for the second showing. We're excited to put together an offer. Erin and Maddie are having a conversation right now. We're going to get back on the phone and put it together. So I'm calling to find out what's important to your sellers. What does a great offer look like? Now, 9,000 times out of 10, you're going to hear cash yesterday, Tim. And then we move through that. And they're like, well, actually, and if the first 5 to 38 bullet points aren't money yet, money's going to come into play.
Yeah.
Although to your point, if they're octogenarians and they just want to go to Florida, play golf and die, and they don't want to clean out the basement, they want to leave the tractor in the garage, you make such a great point. Like if we can, because we can turn around and say to the younger couple or the couple that really wants the home, listen, we're going to buy the house. I'll come help you pull down the monkey bars. Yep. We can drain the pool and light it on fire. It's going to be a great bonfire in October, right? Let's get ownership of the house and be creative and see what they're willing to do to make that happen. And Susan's earlier point, are the list agents, the selling agents supposed to be saying anything? No. We're realtors. We're human realtors. We love to talk. So just ask an honest question. gather intel, go back to your buyers and edify them with that, and make the best offer possible, the highest and cleanest offer possible. Eric Fadden has his hand up as well.
Yeah,
Hi,
there's
Eric.
also a question in the chat about telling the buyer the amount to put on their offer. So that's not something that we can do. In New Hampshire, certainly we're not telling people what amount of money to spend. I think you're getting at if a property is going over price or something like that. What we can tell them is we can inform them about the market, what's happening in the market. We can say, you know, in this price range, days on market, houses in this condition that have closed in the last 30 days have closed above market rate or listing. You know, that's where you're, use a CMA to give them information about what's happening in the market. But to say to a buyer, like, you should write your offer for $250,000 or $1 million, that's not how we're going to advise our clients. So definitely be careful about that. And then, so Eric, go ahead. I just wanted to make sure we didn't skip over that in the chat.
Yeah, no worries. Susan, did you want to say anything to that before I ask my question?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I agree with everything Erin said, and I don't typically, I don't tell people what to offer. I do educate them about the market, and it's okay to say, I wouldn't be surprised to see them receive offers over asking. What would you like to offer on the house?
Cool.
But I would say just go with what she has to say. That was true.
So my question kind of brings us back to the love letter idea that you were talking about, and I was kind of initially thinking along those lines when I first thought about getting into this, but then I went to real estate school, and this is kind of a a devil's advocate level question. The topic of the potential, and this is on the buyer side, right? This isn't like to the co-broke or anything like that, but this is on the buyer side. The company line answer, I guess, in real estate school was almost leaning toward avoiding that because of the potential for opening up the door to liability under fair housing. And so, whether or not you're going to be putting yourself in the awkward position of now having to be an or just really kind of walking into a firestorm inadvertently. I kind of wanted to ask that just as kind of like a point counterpoint thing. But just from a buyer standpoint, like, are we still looking at that as an effective tactic, or are we really like being super duper careful and really, I mean, like, how do you know when to employ this? Because the last thing you want is a fair housing violation when all you were trying to do was just kind of establish that heart-to-heart relationship, between the buyer and the seller.
Yeah, I'm developing the heart-to-heart. I have just no qualms about that at all. I am very cautious on fair housing when it comes to what I'm advertising. On the sell side, whatever I'm putting in my marketing, my marketing with my logo on it, with my name on it, I'm very aware of fair housing. But when it comes to a love letter from a buyer to a seller, my name is not on there anywhere. So I go full in all the way. I'm looking for clues on that showing on how to write the best damn love letter. Like, do they have pictures of kids and my buyers have kids? Do they have pictures of dogs and my buyers have dogs? Do they have pictures of kids in the military and I've got a Marine standing next to me? Whatever they can use to get that house, having them make a personal connection. That's just how I do it.
Logic makes them think, emotion makes them act.
Yeah. Well, put a picture on it. I mean, I go all the way. I'm like, get a picture of your family. If they have a family, so if they have a family that you can tell that these folks are retiring, they've had kids, they've had grandkids, they've had dogs. My young couple with 2 little kids and a dog, that their picture's getting put in there about how many memories. I can tell how many memories you've made in this home. It has such a lovely feeling. I can't wait to bake cookies with my daughter. She loves to cook. My husband can't wait to throw the ball in the backyard. Barf all over them. I mean, that's how I feel about it.
So I agree. And Eric, you're not wrong either. So
I was about to say that was not the answer I was expecting to hear to this question.
So here's the thing. I personally, as a listing agent, have gotten love letters that I do think hurt the buyers on because of the sellers I was working with, their own biases. So that's the part that we can't control, right? Like we can't control that piece. So is there an opportunity for a fair housing violation? I think there could be, right? And you know, there's a lot around this happening right now. So definitely go to contracts classes, talk to your market centers, get really knowledgeable about this. I just took a class actually for diversity and fair housing, and there's a lot coming down the pike around this stuff. It's changing rapidly. So we as agents, we all really need to be very aware of fair housing and just be aware. So it's a picture thing. I think it's so scary. I think that it's interesting. I've had situations where I think it's worked for clients, and I've had situations where I left thinking, is this a fair housing situation? Was that letter, did it hurt them? And so we're always working in the best interest of our clients, and how much bias we can control when there's a letter out there. So just being aware there's two sides to this, and it is getting kind of hairy out there right now. So
Bill Wilkinson put in the chat, can we suggest that they make a strong offer? You absolutely can. Of course, we want to be careful with our words and how we choose to express that to them. I would argue that when you're in ordinary times, back before people were making 40,000 over ask offers, the line I would always use with my buyer is, yeah, Eric, I appreciate that. Here's my concern. If I call you tomorrow, we find out that the house sold, or in 45 days when the other buyer wins out and closes, and we find out that they beat you by $1, will you sleep okay? You know? And just understanding and using the feel, felt, found, you know, because you're going to get that. You always have that cantankerous buyer who's like, as soon as they find out, and right now this is just what we do every day, as soon as they find out they're in a multiple offer situation, they're like, well, I'm not going to fight for the house. It's like, well, slow your roll. Like, we were in love with the house 20 minutes ago. Now, you know, 4 other people are in love with the house, and suddenly you don't love it. Like, let's slow down here. So that being said, if we are going to have that conversation with them, I appreciate how you feel. You know, we have other buyers who have felt the same way. What we've found, and then go back, because we have all the data to be hyper local. What we know, to Erin's point, what we know in the last 3 weeks, in the last 2 months, homes in this neighborhood have closed on average at about, 10% over ask, or 20 to 25,000 over ask, just to give you an idea. And again, the value, you have to deem as a family what you feel the value of this home is, right? And that's the logical half of the coin, is the money. The emotion is, how does their family benefit moving forward, right? The features of the home are one thing. It's the benefit that it will have, how it affects their lifestyle moving forward. And we can move them back to that conversation. And then you can take the difference of what they thought they should offer, what it's actually listed at, and what they might make an offer for. You extrapolate that out over 30 years, and it breaks down to 1 less latte and 1 less pizza a week. It's probably worth for them to be in that school system, to live that lifestyle. So, we're not telling them, hey, you should go in at 475. We never want to say that out loud. We want to guide them to where the industry, where the market currently stands, to make sure that they are edified with all the right information to make the right offer for their family and their future.
If they're not wanting, if you feel like you've given them a lot of information and they're wanting to put in a lower offer anyway, there may be another question that you haven't asked them. So help me understand is a great question. There might be something about that house that really isn't the right one. I don't know. But at the end of the day, yeah, you really shouldn't be suggesting a price.
Well, and Linda B had chimed in earlier too about, as a buyer's agent, we should be running a CMA counter to the CMA
every time
that the list agent used to arrive at that price. Because if you find this massive delta in the numbers, then I can call and say, hey, Erin, it's Tim Lindsay, Keller Williams, is over there with the Johnsons. Just looking at it, is there something I missed historically in the last 6 months that happened in the neighborhood that I don't know about? Because she might be factoring it on a pocket listing she has or something. I need some more information to go back to my buyers to really make sure that the data I have in front of me makes sense, so we can move forward and make the right offer.
Yeah. The flip side of that is you may have a buyer that wants to ask more than what you think they should for a house. And the CMA is equally as important in that scenario because, you know, if you get under contract because you have the highest price and you know your buyer doesn't have, you have to have the conversation with what has closed for comps on that. Because if it doesn't appraise, what's going to happen with that money? Now, they've already paid for inspections, they've already paid for an appraisal, they've already maybe given notice for the home that they're leaving. What's going to happen? Are you going to be able to make up the difference? Because right now, sellers are not necessarily lowering the purchase price because of appraisal. So that's you have to have that conversation too if they want to ask really high over asking, and also knowing what their long game is, because you don't want to put them in a position, or at least you need to educate them on if they put themselves in a position of now being upside down in a house when you know they have to move in 2 years. We don't know what the market's going to look like in 2 years. I don't want my buyer to be upside down. So the CMAs and those closed comps really are important, I think, whether you're going higher or lower.
Yeah, and depending on the financial product they're using, they don't have the freedom to be like, oh, we'll ignore the appraisal and move forward, because they might be locked into a financial product that doesn't allow gift funds. Like just because Uncle Frank wants to stroke you a check to make up the difference doesn't mean it's allowed. You know, so we've got to be really careful about what our buyers are like. But I saw it on TV, like that was HGTV. It's a Canadian show, minus the commercials. We're all crazy. Like we've got to make sure we're talking to them about local law and local financing.
Yep. So bringing them through the process, partnering with an agent, this is really where, you're wanting them to sign buyer agency with you. Get to, absorb their local insight, get to know the neighborhood inventory levels. These are the services that you're offering them. You're going to, see what's about to hit the market. If you have, there's clear cooperation rules that are different in every state on knowing how to know what's coming to the market. But, review market averages, complete needs assessment. Those are some things that you're going to be doing for them. You really want to show them that you're a strong agent so that they're going to want to sign that agreement. Getting the pre-approval for the loan. We did talk a lot about that. Unless anyone has a specific question, I'll keep going, except for the part that you do want to prepare them for escrow and let them know what that means. A lot of times they don't always understand that the deposit comes back to them at closing. You have to know, it's a great way to ask very direct questions about how much money they have. And you're now, by this time in the presentation, you've shown them that you're a professional. And as a professional, it's okay to ask them questions about their money. Do you have money for a deposit? How much money do you have for a deposit? In this price range, we're seeing deposits come in around this much. In this market, we're seeing sellers ask for higher deposits. Now that money does come back to you, but what it does is show that you have skin in the game to your seller. A strong buyer puts in a better deposit than a $1,000 deposit, those type of conversations. So if they come back to you and say, oh, well, I thought that I would ask the seller to pay for my closing costs. It's like, okay, now we need to have a different conversation. But sometimes talking to them about that escrow, we'll start talking about closing costs. And that's really how you dig into how much money do they have? What do they have for reserves? Do they have access to a gift money? Stuff like that. So definitely spend some time and ask them what they have for money. Finding their new home, comparing home and neighborhoods. Favorite homes, showing them how to save them in their listing cart, coach them on looking at their listing cart, coach them on the fact that you may get online and review pictures with them prior to setting up showings, coach them on, please do drive-bys before we set up showings. If you see things that you like, here's a big one. Coach them on, you're the first call. I'm on Zillow, I'm on Realtor.com. I'm on anywhere. I'm sitting out down to dinner with friends. I have a question on this home that I drove by. Call me first. You go to an open house. Let them know that you're working with me. Give them extra cards to hand to an agent at an open house if you want to. If they're going to, it's Friday, I might call you and say, there are some open houses this weekend. If you go to any of them, are there any that you know that you're going to go to? I'm happy to call the agent ahead of time to let them know that you'll be there and that you're working with me. If you see one that you don't know about yet, let them know that you're going to be working with me. So kind of coach them on those things so that they know as they're seeing, because they're going to go out and get really excited. It's like they're going to see a house that checked every box and you're not standing there right next to them. So you want to let them know to come back to you. And then make your offer and negotiate terms. So you can start talking about what does offering look like? What does negotiating look like? What does the process look like as far as title? Preparing for the down payment, choosing a target closing date. When we were just talking about ways that might make your offer better than somebody else's, talk about a closing date with your buyer. Are you able to close really quick? Are you able to not close very quickly if you find the right house and it's a benefit to the seller because they might have a home to they might have to purchase a home, find a home to purchase, or they might need 60 days. You might be a better offer. My seller took a buyer's offer that was less money because they went under in June and we're not closing until the end of October because they're going into new construction. And it saved her having to get temporary housing. So that's a great question to ask your buyer on target date. It's also a good time to let them know that those are pieces that you'll do whatever you can to use as leverage when they're going to make an offer. Any question on how buying a home works?
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
So speaking to the entire conversation about financing, but specifically what Tim said about how gifts may not be allowed and whatnot, what if you are working with a buyer and you are really unfamiliar, whether they're pre-qualified or they're pre-approved, you're really unfamiliar with the type of vehicle that it is. How do you find out what the limitations are as far as, you know, what boxes have to be checked in order for you to make an offer that meets the lending criteria as well? For example, like I mean, I don't know a lot about financing, but I know like FHA, you know, it has to be safety, security, and soundness. And how do you learn about those things? Because I don't see we have a lot of education about that.
Oh, okay. I will. That's a great question. So, talk to your lender who you're using. That would be a good one to go back to your market center with and ask for additional education around that. Is this Kimberly?
It is.
I don't have my screen up to see everyone's picture, so I recognize your voice.
I see.
I know that Brad Kelly has, you know, he's a lender here. He has a doc on that. I have a doc on that if you'd like it. I put that with my buyer presentation on for FHA, VA, and USDA on things that we're going to want to look out for when we're looking at homes. So when you're talking to the lender, meaning you specifically on behalf of your client, and they come back and say they really only fit into an FHA loan, get on board with that lender on what the requirements are. There's stuff online as well when you can Google FHA loan requirements and it will pull up a big list. But it's really basically, you know, if you're going and you're looking at homes and there's any maintenance issues, make notes and take pictures. You know, the roof it can't be a roof that's ready to die. There can't be any peeling paint. There can't be any broken windows. Any of those maintenance issues apply to any building on the property. There is, I'm assuming in every state, that there's a section on your buyer agency agreement that talks about we're real estate agents, we're not lenders, we're not attorneys, we're not home inspectors. So we want to guide them on that, but we want to also bring them back to getting full information from who their expert on the team that you're building is for them. But if it is FHA, USDA, or VA, you know, there has to be railings if there's more than a few stairs. I'm looking when I'm going through a house, you know, you'll get into a basement and there'll be electrical junction boxes hanging down with wires exposed, or not enough, or outlets without outlet covers. Any maintenance issue when you're looking around a house, I write them down when I'm at the house. If I'm not sure of what something is, I take a picture of it so that I can go back and ask when I'm preparing that offer. Because you want to make sure it's going to be okay with their loan type. B, when you're making the offer and you've seen some maintenance issues, you're going to want to run down that list with your buyer okay, we know going into it that the property disclosure disclosed that the roof is, 40 years old. Or when we were at the house, we could see that there were shingles all over the yard, those types of things. So for A, for lending, and B, for preparing an offer. So if you're going to be asking over asking price and this is a maintenance nightmare, you may want to have deeper conversations about that.
So what if as an agent you write up an offer and then you find out after the fact that the house is in, like Tim said about grandpa's given a gift or whatever it is, you find out after you've made the offer and it's accepted that something doesn't jive, and I mean, that may be too broad of a question, but what do you do as an agent if you ask the questions but you just didn't ask the right ones?
So there's a couple things. Prior to submitting an offer, if I am working with, prior to even making a showing request, if I am working with anybody outside of cash or conventional, I am calling the agent and I'm asking, I have a FHA buyer. Is there anything at the house that would make this not FHA approved or make it difficult or challenging for an FHA loan? Because on the flip side, when that agent receives an offer, if it's an FHA offer and they know what they're doing, they're going to let their seller know your house is not going to go FHA. If you have that open conversation with the co-broke on, we saw that the railing is going to have to be put in place. We saw that there's going to have to be, paint peeling, that there's peeling paint that's going to have to be scraped and painted. Is your seller able to make those repairs to satisfy a VA loan or to satisfy an FHA loan? They may or they may not be able to do that. So if you have those loan types, you really should do your homework prior to going to a showing and while you're at the showing and talking to your co-broke before writing it up. It's a challenge for FHA buyers in those scenarios because sometimes those are the lower price point houses that they can afford, and it's really stressful for them when they continuously go to see homes that will not pass FHA. So avoiding even going to see those homes, if you've called the lender, the agent, and their seller is not willing to do anything, and they're like, yeah, there's peeling paint all over the place, and they're not going to fix it, is it worth going to the showing? Probably not. What also happens if that goes through, if you put them into a house and get them under contract and the FHA appraiser comes back and they come back, what will happen is they're going to come back with an appraised value with conditions, and those conditions have to be met prior to the loan closing. And then it's another fee for the appraiser to go back out there. So if it costs you $600 for the appraisal, and you know that these things have to be done and you don't get them taken care of prior to the appraisal going out, it could be another $150 for them to go back once the conditions are met that the buyer pays for. Does that help?
Yes, but I mean, if we didn't figure that out ahead of time, then and we've made the mistake, what do we,
you need to school up now. If you're going to take on an FHA buyer, get that list.
Make sure
talk to your lender. It's really not it's not a huge list. I mean, it's the big things that I look out for are the peeling paint, the railings with more than 3 steps, any broken windows. Windows have to be able to open and stay open on their own, and they do check. And this goes for any building on the property. So if you have a decrepit old shed in the back that has peeling paint and a broken window, that has to get fixed. There can't be any rot anywhere. So if you have window trim and it's all rotted, that can get flagged. They're also going to check if you're on septic and well, that there's 75 feet between the leach field and the well is at least 10 feet from the property lines. So get the list from your lender. They should have it. If they don't have it, you might need a different lender or ask a different lender. Go online and Google FHA home requirements. It's definitely there. I'm happy to share mine. If anyone wants it, they can reach out to me on Facebook Message or something. It's a great talking point to your buyers when you know they're FHA. Anybody else?
Susan, I was going to jump in real quick. We've had a few hands get raised and a few messages for a bio break. So if people want to run to the men's and ladies room and meet us back here. So should we agree that it would make sense to do, what are we digitally right now? At what? It's 11 o'clock. Do you want to do 11:10? Come back for 11:10?
Yeah, sounds good.
And wrap up?
Yep.
All right, guys. We'll be back in 10 minutes.
Hello, we all back?
Ready to go when you are.
Okay. Anyone else on how buying a home works? Okay. So affiliated business arrangement disclosures. This is where I have not used Keller Mortgage yet, but Keller Mortgage is definitely available to you. The more time you spend talking about, actually I'm on the wrong one. You can definitely offer this to your folks. If you're using Keller Mortgage, they must sign this agreement. It says that the agents don't get anything from Keller Mortgage for your folks to use them. So it's going to be important that they understand that. I'm really careful, even when I do like to go to my local lender or my my preferred inspection companies, stuff like that. But you don't want to tell them who they have to use. So if they want to use, because we don't want them to think they're getting a kickback, that we're getting a kickback from any affiliated partner. So for Keller Mortgage, if they are going to go that, even though it has it is part of Keller and what we have to offer, it's important that they know that they're not going to be paying us anything for them to use them. Does anyone have any good experiences they might want to share on Keller Mortgage? I have heard some folks using them and their clients have been happy. So don't be afraid to use them. Okay. So we'll just buzz right over to the next one. The real value, real experience. This is all about them. So the more time you spend telling about you, the less time you're building a relationship with them and learning about them. So I don't use my page in my presentation about me all that much. I let them know that it's there. I'm hoping, my goal is that during the whole presentation, they're seeing and hearing my value. They're seeing and hearing the passion that I have for the business, for Keller Williams, for their wants and needs, more important than anything else. My passion for wanting to make this a great process for them, my authentic desire to understand how I can make this process good for them and how I can make a good impact on their life. So for me, I am expressing my value during the whole presentation and during my calls to them so that when we get to this part of the presentation, they have the information. And if they want to know more, then encourage them to ask. Show them where they can find reviews about you. If you're new to the business and you can leverage your market center's numbers. If you're on a team, you can leverage your team's numbers. You can leverage the collective team's years in the business, stuff like that. You can. I do like to express that the way that I like to work is that it is a win-win for everybody. This section on the win-win integrity, super important. You're showing them your integrity, that you do the right thing. That's really important during your presentation to express, because ethics is very important. Your commitment's important. Your communication, you've talked a lot about that during your presentation. Your creativity, you've gone through your creativity when you've talked about how you're going to help them be a strong buyer, how you're going to help position them with a seller in a competitive market. You've talked about teamwork on the team that you're building, the team that you have with your buyer, that you're building, the team that you're building with your lender and your inspection process, and that whole piece of it. Trust. The trust piece is very important because, you want them to be able to trust you and that you're always going to be honest with them. This piece of it is important because you don't want to have commission breath. You don't want them to walk away from any interaction with you feeling like the most important thing that buyer is to you is a commission check. The most important thing is that they're getting what they want and that you're helping them. So the trust part is important, and that we have success results through people. And So I think if you do a really good job during your presentation and your communication, it's good to have this piece in your presentation, but I don't focus on it, if that makes any sense. Everyone should have a value proposition, and you should practice what your value proposition is so that it comes out authentically prior to this piece of your presentation. I build my business on relationship, service, and results. And at the very beginning of my presentation, it's in my logo, it's my tagline. I let them know that all of my business comes from relationships, and that's the most important piece to me. When I have the relationship down, then I can focus on service and getting them the result that they desire. So figure out what yours is and how it will roll off your tongue. That's your elevator pitch. You're presenting all the time. You're doing a buyer presentation all the time. You're doing a buyer presentation when you're talking to sellers. You're doing a buyer presentation when you're on Facebook. So the more you really understand who it is, how it is that you want to conduct your business and you can communicate that with, you can be communicating it through tons of opportunities that you're talking to talking to your buyers with prior to getting this page. Any questions on that? I think value proposition has already been covered in Ignite at some point.
Yeah, we drilled down hard on that yesterday. There was one quick comment from Jennifer Kim in the chat about using Keller Mortgage rather than, and she lists Bank of America here, rather than your local lender. So I would absolutely all day, find a local lender. Susan mentioned earlier, Brad Kelly, he's in our market center up here at 463. If you've got your local lender or allied resource that works closely with your market center, that local conversation is just going to get you further, and you're probably going to have better results for your clients. If your client is arguing that they want to use Bank of America or any of the big banks because they're a customer there and they can't wait to use them, we've got to make them, we have to allow them to make that decision. Invariably, they'll probably come to find that it would have been maybe a better experience to go with a local lender. Keller Mortgage is on the table because, unfortunately, and I practice saying this without crying, Rocket Mortgage is currently the #1 lender on the planet. Still makes me want to throw up in the back of my neck a little bit. So Rocket Mortgage is the #1 lender on the planet right now. So Keller Mortgage, Gary just felt like, listen, we need to be part of this conversation. And if you drill down with Keller Mortgage, take some time, look into it, there is a lot of benefit for your sellers and the incoming buyer. So there's a lot of benefit into using them. If you have someone who's inclined to jump on their couch, jump on their phone, and look at Rocket Mortgage or any online lender that's not local, then they should be exploring Keller Mortgage as well. That aside, I would always recommend, and I feel Susan agrees with me, getting those great relationships locally, because even your greatest local lender, Brad Kelly here for us at Annie Mac Mortgage, he doesn't do all the financial products. He can't have all the conversations. He can have most of them. And then we have other people for portfolio loans, commercial stuff. So make sure you start to build those financial conversations locally. When you have that relationship, your buyers will be better taken care of and they'll never forget you for it.
Yep, absolutely. And, when you have buyers that are saying they want to use like a Rocket Mortgage or a Bank of America or something like that, it's important now to like take a breath and let them know that, I'm looking out for your best interest. It's always great to get another opinion. Something that that you're going to want to be aware of is, let's find out what their true costs are, because there could be hidden costs in there. It's not always about rate. And you can even have them go to Rocket Mortgage and ask them for a breakdown of their expenses, because in my experience, a lot of those lenders, when it actually gets through the loan process, there's more hidden fees in there, or they may be paying points that they weren't made aware of, because they're looking at what's my payment going to be and what's my rate. they might not realize that there could be additional closing costs, because if you're not asking Rocket Mortgage that question, they're not telling the buyer right away the answers to those questions. So yeah, I think that is a good point to bring up. Have them get a second opinion. That it's your job to be the expert, and we're not expert lenders, but we are experts in pointing them to the right direction. Any other questions? Awesome. So now you guys are ready to go build your presentation. One thing that we haven't touched on, and we're going to kind of talk a little bit about this as we conduct the buyer presentation, is practice. We don't want to practice on your client. We practice on your spouse, your parents, anyone in your family, your friends. Find another agent in your market center or outside your market center that wants to practice the buyer consultation, and practice on them, so that you're not practicing on your client. I think that a big piece of the buyer presentation is also your tone, your confidence, your smile, your body language, how you're dressed. All of those pieces come into play when you're conducting a buyer consultation. They also come into play with how you represent yourself in the market. They come into play, this isn't in the presentation, but I can't help myself. It comes into play in how you represent yourself socially. So be mindful of your social presence, because it will impact and it's part of your buyer consultation, whether you know it or not. These folks have a very strong likelihood that they've gone online and looked at you. Make yourself be someone that they've wanted to see and someone that they want to represent them. If you're not on social media, get over it, get on it, and put a positive presence out there, because it will help you in this piece of conducting the buyer presentation. So now we'll move right into conduct the buyer consultation. The goal here for me, and hopefully for you, is to get the contract signed. If they're not ready to sign your contract, then they have a question that you haven't answered yet. And that's something that you can directly ask them. If you get to this part of your presentation and you're ready to pull out your contracts, and they're like, I'm not quite ready to sign that, I feel like then I would say, I feel like there's something that I haven't asked for you. I haven't answered for you. What other questions do you have for me? Encourage them to open up on that piece of it, because you really do want that buyer representation signed. This is also, I don't know how many of you are, and I don't know all the state's contracts, so I'm going to put this out as if we were in my market center and talk about commission. I love being direct with buyers on commission. It's important that they understand that this is how I feed my family. I'm in a different position where I'm a husband-wife team. I let them know we support our entire household on commission. I've shown them a lot of value. We're seeing commissions splits, and I'm going to try to make that the only time I use the word split, not always be coming back as a 3%. In my market center, I shoot for a 3% buyer commission. We're not always getting 3% from the seller side. And right now, as a buyer agent, you're working so hard. It's a lot of work to get a buyer under contract. You've spent so much time building your business, right? Your lead generating takes a lot of time, takes a lot of practice, takes a lot of energy. You spent a lot of time going to contracts class, being an expert, learning the contingencies and complications that go with representing someone in a huge transaction. You're spending a lot of time servicing your buyer. You deserve to get paid for that. So I am someone that wants to get my 3% as often as I can. So I practice that. So I don't know who out there is doing that. If you are doing that, chime in. The script that I use for that, when I open up my buyer agency agreement and I get to the line for commission, I pause and I say, okay, now we're going to talk about how I get paid. And I slow my speech down because I want them to be super clear on how I get paid. We talk about, you know, a lot of most of the time I'm going to get paid directly from the seller. My commission is 3%. If the if the seller is not able to cover that full 3%, then I'll be looking for you to make me whole. And then I kind of stop. And they look at each other. The majority of the time they go, okay. And then you go on to explain, or I go on to explain, prior to submitting any offer, we're going to talk about commission is and what, if there's a situation where I might have to ask you for 0.5% in commission towards my 3% commission. So you're preparing them. You may or may not use it. I have used it. I don't use it 100% of the time, but I do frequently get a 3% commission, even if I'm getting paid 2 or 2.5 from the listing agent. If you stumble on any of it, they will lose confidence in you. And then they'll start questioning signing it at all. So for the buyer agency agreement, you should be able to read that upside down. You should know every single line of that. You should be able to explain it to them. I don't know, how do you guys feel about that? It wasn't in this presentation, but I feel like it's an important piece to talk about how you're going to get paid.
Hi, my name is Joyce. So we can ask the buyer to pay a percentage of our commission. Is that what I'm hearing?
Sure.
Yeah, your market centers are going to love that I brought this up. You can. So it doesn't, you know, on our buyer agency agreement, it doesn't say that the seller has to pay me all of my commission. We're moving into a time where other areas of the country, the buyers are already paying for their own commission to their agent. Where we have competitors moving into our marketplace, the Redfins and you know, the iBuyers and Zillow and everybody else, they're trying to take our commission away from us. I work really hard, and I let my buyers and my sellers know that I'm going to work very hard for you. I'm very passionate about my job. I'm very invested in representing you and getting you into the right home, and in doing that with all of your best interests at heart. So it's important to talk about how you get paid. And it is okay if what if your buyer decides they want a for sale by owner? How are you going to get paid? You have to have a script for that. So if it's a for sale by owner, and that's why that, you know, stopping and talking about that line on commission in your buyer agency agreement is really important, because you don't want to discourage them from looking at a for sale by owner. Because remember, we've asked them already, when you're out socializing and online, if they see a for sale by owner, I still need them to call me because I still want to represent them. If you see a for sale by owner out there, let me know. I'm happy to make that call directly to the seller for you, and I will ask them to pay my commission, and we'll go through that process together. And then you have to be prepared to do that. Now, do I get that 3% or that, you know, another 0.5% or whatever it is from a buyer every time? No. If I have a buyer who they don't have it, and I know they don't have it because I've been very direct with them on conversations about their money, then when we get to this point, I still tell them, I earn a 3% commission on my transactions. Now, if a seller is offering me 2.5, I know we've discussed that you don't have that. I might now ask for a referral. I might ask them to help me get more business in a very professional way. I might leverage that piece. So it's a good way to to get to the point of asking for a referral, but you absolutely can have your buyer pay for some of your commission. But you have to be upfront about it at the buyer presentation, and you have to be upfront about it at the point of submitting an offer. So when you're submitting an offer and you've already called that co-broke, when you called to set up the showing, you've asked them, I have a 3% buyer agreement with my buyer. Are you able to support that? They say, no, we're able to support a 2, or no, we're able to support a 2.5. Then when you're making that offer, you have to have that conversation at that time, that when we put this offer in, the seller's going to pay me 2.5. I'll be looking to you to make me whole on that 0.5.
The other side of that too, Susan, is and Joyce, don't forget too, and especially right now where we've got way more buyers than we have inventory, right? So there's that unforeseen conversation with the FSBO that doesn't exist yet. Just if I'm working with the Joneses and they love 123 Main Street and they're like, well, we love that house, Timmy, but it's not on the market yet. Well, no, it's not on the market yet. Guess what I do for a living? I put houses on the market. That same FSBO conversation could take place if I'm just door knocking a house and saying, hey, I have buyers who want to buy your place. And you got to be okay if they're like, well, we work with Ted from ABC Real Estate. Cool. I just want my buyers to get into the house. If the seller is truly clueless and unrepresented, you could have that conversation about what compensation looks like, the same way you would with a FSBO as well. So being good about that. And I hope you guys heard Susan loud and clear. It's about, are you able to support that? We cannot ask if they are splitting with us. That is tortious interference. We're talking about the relationship between the seller and the list agent, and we cannot have that conversation. So we want to make sure that we're always sharing the information of what we have contractually. And that's easy to go back to your buyer with too. And Eric's got a devil's advocate question. Of course he does. We'll get to that in a second.
I love those ones.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot easier for me to say to my buyer, hey, listen, I work with a lot of great agents, and what we're experiencing in the marketplace right now for marketing, for marketing prices is usually a lot of 6 apples, because we don't want to say 6% when we're sitting at Applebee's on our 5th beer, right? So 6 apples. So if for you to sign with me at 3% gives me the opportunity to ask for that. For me to have a contract with you that's less than 3, I'm automatically going into my conversation on any property that could be offering 3%. I can't legally accept that because my contract with you isn't such. And that agreement as business owners here too, right? And talk to your leadership about this. Ultimately, that's the money that the buyer owes the firm. Although here at our marketplace, our market center, Nathan allows us to conduct our business. I can have a contract that says 3%, and I have the room to move within that conversation between my buyer. Because quite honestly, and I know Susan Kenyon feels this way, I'm not going to lose a buyer or screw up them moving into the house of their dreams over 0.5% when I could get referrals from them for the rest of my life, right? So we don't want to be stepping over dollars to pick up pennies. We want to make sure that we're playing the long game again, and we're creating a legacy business. So, hey, if you're able to support that, great. If not, I trust that you'll send me all the people you know and love and trust for the rest of your natural life. Awesome. Yep. Let's make this offer, right? Yep. Eric asked, it would be much easier to digest a conversation about going to the buyer for additional commission with 7 to 35 years of experience. Pretty big window there, Eric. I love you, buddy. Behind us. As a new agent, it's hard to be prepared to push for it when we're questioning our very own every move. So I understand that. I'm going to tell you, ready as a lie. We talked about this yesterday. Get really good at explaining to them, hey, listen, the way I negotiate for my business and my family is the same way I'm going to represent you when we get to the table. If you've got a listing agent who's willing to take a lesser commission, how are they going to fight for your family when offers start to come in? And if I'm not going to represent you as a buyer's agent to the best of my ability, I'm not representing my family. How do you expect me to represent your family? Because when it breaks down, and honestly, and if you have to go down this wormhole, which I don't want you guys to, because you're going to build your value propositions, and that whole conversation leading up to getting the contract signed will probably lessen the friction you're feeling when you get to the 3% conversation or whatever your number is. All that being said, when I explain to them, hey, listen, as we move forward, the 3% is the way my family moves forward. And that's also baked into the price of the home. It's not above and beyond the price of the home. This is all extrapolated out of the price of the home. So whatever you're paying for the house, the 3% isn't above and beyond that. It's already baked in. It's a conversation that's already taken place between the listing agent and the seller. But you need to allow me to have the wherewithal to step into this conversation with 3%. And if I'm unable to do that, then we can have a conversation around that. But I want to go in, we want to go in with a strong conversation, and it starts here, right?
So here's an interesting fact for you. On our team, the newer agents are the ones that get this. The agents that have been in the business for a while don't get the 3%. I have newer agents that get the 3% because it's the way that they're taught, and they don't think anything of it. So I challenge you to look at that. I challenge you to look at it a different way. And practice it. Even if you practice saying it and then you don't collect on it until you get comfortable collecting on it. And I feel it will also prepare you for what potentially could be happening in your market in the years to come. There is a very strong likelihood that it's coming, people. It's coming.
Yeah,
the writing is already on the wall.
Having co-broke conversations for our half of the commission.
Yep.
We're going to be getting our commission from our buyer up front. That's probably coming to a theater near us. It's a great point.
Yep. And your confidence too is what helps you get that signed. But my listing presentations and buyer presentations, they're long. I've sat at the table for a long time with the buyer. By the time we get to this point, they've learned a lot about me through my communication, through my guidance, through my interaction with them. They've learned a lot about how much I care through all the questions that I've asked, how I've listened, how I've shown them that I've listened. It's a lot. This piece is a lot easier to go over and for them to digest because of all of the work that I've done. So the buyer presentation is really important because you're laying all of the foundation prior to pulling out that buyer agency agreement. So practice it, try it out, practice it on some family and friends first. But I really do feel like it would help in the future because I think it is going to be coming here in our region more quickly than I think agents that have been in the business for a long time realize.
Kimberly just asked about rolling the extra commission into closing costs.
So yeah, yes and no. The challenge is that right now it's hard to get closing costs because the competition, if you're in a competitive market now, we have hyper local markets that are buyers markets. In general, we're in a competitive seller's market. If you're writing a contract for a buyer and it's competitive, putting any kind of closing costs in there might eliminate them. So I'm not serving my client best right now by doing that because it could put them over the top. As a listing agent, if I'm in a multiple offer situation and I see closing costs in there, that's the first red flag. It might make your offer less attractive. And I don't want to do that for my buyer. My goal is to get them into the house that they want. So yes, you can do that. So if you're in a time and place and market where you can put that in there, then you do write that into the contract where seller to pay X number of dollars towards buyer's closing costs, prepaids, commissions, however your market center is recommending that you word that. I'm happy to share that with you if you reach out to me how I word that. The other thing that you'll need to do is if your buyer is going to be paying any commission, then you need to let the lender know that as soon as you go under contract. They'll most likely ask for a copy of your buyer agency agreement. And then when you get to the title piece of your contract, the title company will most likely ask for a copy of your buyer agency agreement as well. Now, when I'm sending any of that information to lenders and to title, I'm CCing my buyer because the important piece of having a buyer pay any commission is that Everything is above board. None of this is hidden. We've communicated it at the buyer presentation. We've communicated it at the time of submitting an offer. So now we're going to communicate it again when we're submitting the offer to the contract to the lender, and when the title company is going to be preparing the closing docs. Any other questions on that?
I have, I just put in a question, but
me not looking at chat is a way for me to force you guys to talk to me.
not a problem. If the market center has a 2.5% commission rate and you can get the 3% commission into the contract, when the split goes, does the market center still split off the 2.5 that they require, or are they going off the 3% in the contract?
I'm not sure I fully understand your.
Like, would they do the split off of the 2.5%, so they'd take 2.5% that price, or would they take it off the 3% that you have in the contract?
So you're split with Keller.
Yes.
It's off of whatever commission comes into the market center, because remember that this buyer agency agreement is between Keller Williams and your buyer.
Right. Okay.
So if you know the total commission that comes into Keller Williams, your splits come on that. And then when you're closing and your buyer gets that settlement statement, there'll be a line item that says, you know, that shows the buyer commission on there. And now what's really fun about that is the listing agent goes, what? And then you can try to recruit them and say, if you'd like, I can teach you how to get 3% from your buyers. If you want to just have fun with them, I don't know. But yeah,
and all things considered too, Bill, and everybody in class today, please have clarifying conversations with your MCA or your respective market centers. Although to Susan's point, and to clarify for Bill, I believe what you were asking is the GCI check coming back into the building is going to have the same experience with Keller Williams across the board, typically. That should be the way it is.
Yep. Another thing that we're doing here again is we're reminding them, do not click get more info when you're on realtor.com or when you're online, call me. The click more info now becomes text Susan. The get more info now becomes pick up the phone and call Susan. I'm happy to get you the most accurate information on any property that you're seeing out there. Everyone they meet, your buyer meets, is going to be an expert. So I do like to touch on that when I'm, at this point in a buyer presentation. As soon as they go out to dinner, now their friends are going to be experts because they just bought a house, or their parents are going to be experts because they bought a house 25 years ago. Prepare them for that and just say, you know what, everyone's going to want to give you advice. What's so great about our relationship is that I'm an expert in representing you as a buyer. So when you have those questions, please come and see me or ask me. And let them know that you'll give them the most accurate information. So, because they are going to get that. They're going to go to dinner and then go, well, why can't your seller pay for the closing costs? That person giving them advice might not understand how competitive the market is right now. So you're going to warn them about those things because it's going to happen. I also warn my lender, like when we've moved into this big the super sellers market, I've asked my lender, like, don't prepare them that they're going to get seller closing costs, because they're not gonna. It's not going to happen. So you need to be a team with your lender. That's another reason to be in relationship with everybody that's on your team, because people spew out information and advice all the time, and you want to make sure that we're all on the same page here as far as things like closing costs. Okay. Any questions? Buyer representation agreement. I know we all have different states and different buyer agency agreements, so I am not going to pull out a specific state one. However, I would encourage you guys to be, read, if you haven't read the buyer agency agreement, read it to start with, but be able to read it and explain it upside down. Like, see on this picture how this page is turned? I mean, really it should be turned just facing them. You should be that good at it when they can be looking at that buyer agency agreement and you can be taking your pen and pointing to the paragraph and explaining every piece in that. this is a huge transaction for them. It might be the biggest purchase that they've made in their life. And you want to make sure you're getting through that contract piece very crisply, very confidently, and very cleanly. You also don't need to overtalk the buyer representation agreement. If you're on commission and you're saying, if I get 2.5 from the seller, then I'll be looking to you to make me whole on that 0.5, and they're nodding their head, going, "Yep, yeah, absolutely." Stop. Keep going. You don't need to overspeak on pieces that they're giving you the clues that they are totally getting. And then I know with different states, we have different other pieces of contracts and paper that you have to get signed. I would just say for every other one of them, your brokerage relationships and any disclosures that your market center has, be able to get through those and explain them to them very clearly so that they know what they're signing. I do feel compelled in here to also share with your buyer what you're not able to do, what it's not our responsibility to do, whether that be, look into whether there's been, if there's any sexual predators in the area, or if the house was ever haunted. I get that question, believe it or not, houses being haunted. If there's a Superfund site within the neighborhood, things that you're not responsible for, encourage them to make those calls. Hey, if you see a house that you really like and that's a concern for you, point them in the direction of where they can get the information. Feel free to call a local municipality if you have questions on what the makeup of that neighborhood looks like. If they're telling you that they have concerns about the number of police calls or something like that, have them do that work, because you don't want that liability on you for the information that you passed on to them, if that makes sense. And of course, you can share your KW app with them so that they can have that information, and that information will go into command for you if they're looking at that through your command page. Go to command designs for your presentation and or your guide if there's a guide in there that you can use. And again, if you don't know where to find that in command, go to the question mark with the circle around it that's in the top right hand corner. But again, if they have questions or when you get to any piece of this, don't wing it. The buyer's presentation is a business meeting, so be prepared for that. The buyers want you to lead them, so be a leader. This goes through some more, get insights on what your buyer truly wants in a home, and you can go through command and it will pull that information onto their contact so that you can review in their timeline what they're looking at, stuff like that. If you see that they have activity, then that's a great time to call them. At the very beginning, when we talked about, a lead is a one-way conversation, a contact is a two-way conversation, and then it drops down into capture. They're giving you clues that they're ready to buy, sell, or invest in real estate. This is a clue area. So when you're seeing activity on their saved homes, that's a great time to pick up and make sure that you're in line with their timeline of being ready to start talking about buying or investing, and setting the appointment, and then getting through this buyer presentation. Align your guide, and then we get to ahas. Does anybody have an aha or a question on anything that we've covered that they'd like to chime in on? No, I go ahead.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead. I didn't hear you the first time. Go ahead.
The fact that you could actually ask for more of a percentage from your buyer. So instead of just accepting the 2.5%, you could ask for 3%. And I realize that is part of when you sign the contract, when you sign the buyer agreement. I just had never thought about asking for the other 0.5%.
Awesome. Are you going to try it?
Sure.
Somebody, Susan, somebody in the chat had expressed that they had practiced it and they were told that they were greedy. And again, that's about, maybe when we get to that point of the conversation, have we developed enough value? If our value proposition is there, we typically will get less pushback on that. And it doesn't mean that we don't experience pushback from people. It's just they're again, the miseducation of HGTV, they all think we have like a $9.3 million salary and anything we make at the closing table is like bakery money or something, that's for coffee and eclairs or something. It's not. It's the entire, it's the totality of our income, and they don't necessarily understand that way. And we don't want to have to sit there and explain ourselves to them. We just want to make sure that they see value in what we're doing. So without fail, making sure you're getting really good at understanding what you're going to ask for as a buyer's agent, as your standard. And then above and beyond that, and we talk about it all the time. In the Red Book, Gary calls it leads, listings, leverage. It's leads, listings, leverage. Not that the buyers don't give us leverage. They give us less leverage for sure. So we can always control the commission in our life and in our business when we're getting the listing and we're commanding whatever we're commanding for a marketing number, whether that's a 6 or a 13 or a 7. And then we do, it makes it easier for us to have that other side of the conversation when more often than not, we're leading with the listing and we've already had the commission conversation, and getting real good at setting that up when you're going into that phone call, even to set up the first showing. We talk about this a lot at our market center. When is the best time to clarify what the number is that's being offered in your local MLS? If I'm going to call Susan and say, hey, it's Tim Lindsay, I've got some clients that want to see 123 Main Street. Can you do Saturday at 1? And she says, yes. Hey, Susan, I appreciate that. Look forward to seeing you. Real quick before we jump off the phone, I noticed in the MLS that you have buyer compensation at 2% or at 2.5%. My agreement with my buyers is for 3. Are you able to support that? She knows right away now that, wow, he was really upfront. If he's that clear in our first conversation, he's probably going to show up for the rest of the transaction. The apprehension for a lot of listing agents is, I know I'm going to be doing most of the heavy lifting, because a lot of buyers agents are permanent buyers agents and they sort of fumble their way through the transaction. When you show up like a business person, you have that clarifying conversation right off the bat. It typically will go well after that. And all I want is the truth from them at that point. If they can't support 3 and like, no, hey, I've got it at 5, I'm able to do 2.5. Cool. Then when we get the closing, when we get the commission statement and I find out that wasn't the truth, I'm going to call back and just, Nathan always taught me to play dumb, which I do at a really high level. I would call back and just say, hey, Susan, we had the conversation way back when, and you said you weren't able to support 3. I noticed that you're getting 3.5 and I'm getting 2.5. I'm just wondering, was it something I said? Was it something I did wrong? And let them, I can call them back and clear that up. I'm sorry, I must have forgotten, or whatever the case may be. And when you do have that clarifying conversation over the phone about where they stand and if they can support your 3, follow it up with an email. Thanks for taking my call. See you Saturday at 1. Thanks for clarifying that you're able to support 3%. Get it in writing. That way, when you're going back over the commission statement 45 days later, you've got that evidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I jump in here real quick?
Sure.
Tim, what was the thing that you said you don't want to get into trouble asking somebody or saying the wrong thing?
We reinforce that we want to ask if they're able to support. They're not if they're splitting. For me to say, because for me to say to you, hey Annie, I noticed you've got buyer's compensation in the MLS listed at 2%. Are you splitting? Because now I'm asking you about your financial relationship between you and your seller. All I can do is give the evidence. The same way I'd come back with a home inspection. If I'm asking for a certain amount of money from the seller based on home inspection findings, I want to present the evidence to support my argument. So all I need to say is, my agreement with my buyers is for 3. Can you support that? Because I can't ask what your agreement with what your seller is. I can just ask if you're able to support more than you're showing, because it's less than what my agreement with my buyers is for.
So then it would be the actual listing agent sharing percentages with you, not their seller.
It
but
is it is the seller.
agent.
Ultimately, it's the seller. Although here's the thing: in our listing agreements, at least here in the state of New Hampshire, for sure, we have the line in the listing agreement that we are gonna co-broke fairly with other offices, right? Or evenly. Now, again, you have that conversation up front. If I tell the Lindsays, hey, listen, this is what I'm going to put in the MLS because we're gonna hold some back in case we need it for X, Y, and Z. But if I don't have that honest conversation with my seller, and then I tell the buyer's agent I can't support it, then the buyer's agent comes back through the contract and asks the seller to support the missing commission. Now you might have started a fight over the fence between the list agent and the seller. But that was based on the information or the misinformation that the seller gave me in our conversation. So it's tortious interference for us to reach over the fence and start to have a conversation with the list agent about their financial agreement with the seller. We can't do that. All we can do in good faith and in integrity is let them know what our agreement with our buyer is and ask them if they're able to support that.
Okay.
And as a coach for all of you listening, and everybody's market center is different, so I'm definitely talking to 463. If anybody else wants to listen, go get the listings, capture sixes or whatever your number is, capture your number and kill them with kindness and co-broke to the best of your ability. That's a business decision you're going to personally make. But if every time I run into Annie, is it Demansky? Demansky, sorry. Every time I run into Annie, she's always got great listings. She's always supporting three. Like what is going on over there at Keller Williams, right? I want to find out how is she so good at her job. She's able to fight for her life at the kitchen table. She's able to support my life through the contract. Like I want some of that.
Yep.
What the Kool-Aid they're drinking across the street. Let's go find out what's going on because they're doing something right. So I'd say get those conversations down pat with your listings and your buyers, and kill the co-brokes with kindness. Right. Make it a win-win for everybody.
The buyer agency is really a loyalty agreement, and sometimes I use those words. This is our agreement to work with each other, and it's really a loyalty agreement.
Bill Wilkinson has a raised hand for us.
Go ahead.
All right, I already asked that question earlier.
Okay.
Looks like Joyce wants to ask a question.
Tim, I have a question. So you might have said this already, but I didn't hear it. In the MLS, it lists how much the seller agent is willing to, what percentage the seller agent is, I don't know how to say it. The seller agent.
What they're offering for buyer's agency compensation. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, you'll see that. It won't be most MLSs have a public view and then a private view. And the private view, which is usually accessed only by agents, you can see that there.
Okay.
If you scroll down, it'll show what they're offering.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill.
Awesome. Any other ahas? Well, I would say that this is part of the basics and master it. And especially if you're a newer agent, there's a lot of shiny objects out there. Marketing and building your website and building a Facebook page. But this is the basics. Master this first and then go after the other shiny objects second. Because if you don't nail this, you won't get a buyer agency agreement, and you won't move towards the running your business part. That would be the biggest advice that I have. And then we'll go to your daily success habits, which is still 10 contacts added, 10 conversations a day, 10 handwritten notes, and 10 home previews per week. The dealing with business never takes place of finding business. So keep filling that funnel from the top. Practice your scripts. If you don't like to practice scripts, do it anyway. Why? Because you don't want to practice on your customers and your clients. Success leaves clues. Successful agents have continued to practice scripts. They won't feel like a script the more you practice them, because you'll have internalized them and it will come more naturally to you. I don't think that scripts are being fake. I think it's a way to be more authentic, because when you're having a conversation with someone or you're presenting to them, you know what to say, and you can spend more time listening to what the other people are saying, as opposed to, oh my God, what am I going to say if they ask about commission? What am I going to say if they ask about lending? What am I going to say if they ask about, something? So the more you script, the more you can listen.
Yes, scripts allow us to listen at a higher level, right?
Yep, for sure. Reminder for compliance, do not call folks on the do not call list. Update your call list regularly so that you don't become in violation. And I wasn't planning on doing this part, Tim.
No, it's all right. No, I think we did a lot of we had a lot of exits we took off the highway today to answer questions and have some side conversations. So yeah, and we didn't do that. Obviously, Susan said about 4 million times today to get these scripts down pat, and she makes a great point, right? Because you don't have time or money to work on your marketing or to spend on your marketing if we can't get good at getting to the kitchen table or the conference table to sign our sellers and our buyers into our lives. So getting real comfortable with these conversations, and just knowing if you're just getting started, 4,000% of your business is going to be people that know and love and trust you. So having that conversation, and with your closest friends, make sure you protect your finances, because they're going to be like, well, you're a friend. Can you do it for X or Y or Z? If you were a dentist, they wouldn't lean back in your chair and be like, this root canal, super free, right? No, they'd expect you to be a professional. You're going to put a drill in my mouth. I expect to pay for it. There's probably a comma involved. Same thing with our business, because as soon as we start to lower our guard with our friends, they're going to tell their friend, oh, you should definitely call Timmy. He'll give you a break. He gave me a break. We don't want to do that. We want to deliver exceptional service that they feel like they still got, wow, I can't believe that wasn't more. They'll never say that, but we can pretend we feel that in our hearts, right? We want to make sure that we're just delivering over the top so they never question our value. Value is only, the money is only questioned in the absence of value. So if we're over delivering always, the money's just going to make sense.
Yep. If you have questions on where to find resources from your market center, reach out to your market center. They will help you. Update your contacts in Command. If you're not using Command, use some kind of database, but please use a database. You think you're going to remember to follow up with people. You will not remember. You'll get busy, and then you'll forget, and then you'll go on Facebook, and they'll have bought a house, and you'll be kicking yourself. So don't be that person.
Yeah.
That is our fault.
Yeah, it's all our fault. It's never their fault. It's not their job to remember we're in real estate.
Yep, absolutely. And, I know if your market center offers contracts class, please go to it. Please practice your contracts, even if practicing is reading them frequently. Your agency agreements, your market center contracts, your purchase and sales agreements, all of that stuff. Get help from your market center, use Command, use Connect. There's a ton of resources. Just plug into them. Ask your tech director if you don't know how to use something in Command to help you do that. I'm not going to open up Command and get into that, because I know that you all have great resources to be able to do that. And make your success list. If you have a goal and you know that you have to make contacts, don't leave until they're done. If you haven't set an appointment and your goal was to set an appointment, keep making calls. It could be the very next call that gets you the appointment.
I think we're there, kiddo.
I think we're there, unless someone has a question.
I do. When you're doing the FSBO, I know about the do not call rule, but can you send written notes to those do not call people?
Well, you could. I would argue ultimately a FSBO probably has their cell phone written on the sign in the front yard. So they're inviting the phone call. At the same time, across the board, and it's $42,000 per violation nationally. So we want to make sure we are looking at our state's respective do not call list. And we're hanging up immediately when somebody says, well, we can't pick a fight with them. Like, well, no, I checked. You're not on the list. If they say they're on the list, I'm sorry, Mrs. Kenyon. I'll update my notes. Have a great day. We have to move on to the next.
There's other people to call.
Sure.
There's always someone else to call. Just make the calls.
For sure.
Tim,
Yeah.
Quick question on that $42,000. How many of those cases are actually enforced?
I've never been fortunate enough to be on that carpet, so I don't know to the extent those percentages actually run true. I just know that Gary, we never had that slide in our education as much as we've had as of late, because we as a company had an issue with the do not call. So you'll notice when we get into prospecting and marketing, the prospecting slide used to show 21 things you could do to prospect. And he actually pulled off FSBOs and expireds, not because they're not important. You know, Gary wants us to lean into our phones and our grassroots relationships. FSBOs and expireds are fine. It's just the probability that most agents who are newer or afraid to call their friends because our ego gets in the way, they'd rather call the FSBO and the expired. And yes, they've got their hand up and they want to buy something. We just want to make sure we're protecting our businesses and ourselves and the 42 grand. So to the extent they get enforced, Al, I'm not really that sure. And the ignorance is bliss for me. I don't want to find out. But we can look into that. I can certainly probably talk to somebody to find out what we're looking at for a national average.
Gotcha. No, I was curious just to see. There's a lot of focus on it throughout this whole thing, so I was kind of curious.
Yeah, it's in the last year or so since we had somewhere our company got pulled in by the collar, and that's why Gary's been heightened about it. So just please be aware on your local level within your state. Make sure you're looking up your donotcall.gov for your respective state to find out who's on that list. And back to what Susan said, call your people, abuse your phone, call your loved ones. It's probably the best thing to do.
Gotcha.
With that, anybody else have a question? I
didn't have a question. I had a comment. I really liked the verbiage that you used in regards to making yourself whole when it came to commission.
Yeah.
Versus just kind of talking about a dollar amount or, using other verbiage that would I think that will resonate with a lot more people versus.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's very good. Well, and think about it too. We get to go and fight for our family every time we sit at the kitchen table. Most of your friends in corporate America agreed to that initial salary. They've got their cost of living increase they may or may not experience, where we have to go have that conversation on a regular basis, and ask yourself, if you ever scattered out all the missing percentages on a big, huge table in front of your loved ones at the end of your career, would they be hyper disappointed? Like, okay, so you weren't willing to fight for that 5 on you never asked to be made whole. And what was keeping you from doing that? And usually it's our lack of value in ourselves or our confidence in ourselves. So the only way to improve that is by working on our scripts and having more conversations, more at bats. Think about it. Big Papi, when he was with the Red Sox, more home runs or more strikeouts?
Yep.
Strikeouts. We remember the home runs because they're great, right? So the home run is the 6 and the 3. The strikeout's the 2. The strikeout is a deal falling apart. That's going to happen along the way. So I want to thank Susan Kenyon so much for joining us today. She will be back as we get to the end of class toward next week. Make and receive offers tomorrow with Judy Scotland and her crew. We'll be right back here at 9:00. If you guys have any questions, I've thrown my number in the chat. I'll give it out one more time, 603-834-2856. Happy to coach you guys through any of the conversation blueprints we've discussed. And Susan Kenyon, thank you again for your time.
Yeah,
thank you guys for your time. Have a great day. Go call your loved ones, wash your hands, and track down some listings and some buyers. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks, Susan. Great job.
Thank you.